Welcome to another meeting of the Cranston City Planning Commission. There is a quorum and it is 6:30. I'll just start out by welcoming our latest commissioner who graduated from City Council to Planning Commission. And thank you for being here because you helped us make quorum tonight. All right. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for January 7th of 2025. Does any member of the commission have any amendments to those minutes? Seeing none, can I have a motion for approval of the minutes? Motion by Commissioner Zadalis for approval. Do I have a second? Seconded by Commissioner Exter. Any discussion? You'll be abstaining at the appropriate time. Okay. All those in favor signify by saying aye. All those opposed? Abstentions?
Abstain, please.
Commissioner Renzulli abstained. She was not a participant of that meeting. Next item on the agenda is the new subcommittee. As we all are aware, Director Pizzullo has resigned his post, and we have posted last week a position of planning director. So as part of the process, I've been advised by council that we should create a subcommittee, and this subcommittee should be created at an open meeting. I have spoken to Commissioner Coop and Commissioner Lampier, who are both interested in serving on the subcommittee with myself. The reason I was recommending to this body that these three individuals be on the subcommittee for interviewing applicants and reviewing applications is because myself and Mr. Coop are both officers of this body, and Ms. Commissioner Lampier is the most senior commissioner member. Is there any, we cannot have 5 people, by the way, on the subcommittee because that would be an issue with open meeting. So if there is any feedback about that, seeing none, may I have a motion to appoint myself, Commissioner Coop, and Commissioner Lampier to the subcommittee?
So moved.
It's moved by Commissioner Renzulli, seconded by Commissioner Correo. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Okay. Excuse me, what do you want, Councilman Stichels, about what? I will grant you time to talk about, we just voted on it, but come on.
Thank you. I was waiting for.
I didn't think this was an issue
No,
that
I
the
can
public.
understand that.
Yeah.
I'll be brief. I just want to say that this is the hiring of a new planning director is probably the most important thing that you will do on this planning commission. I don't think we've had a good planning director since Kevin Flynn and Jared Rhodes left. We are completely absent for open space acquisition, affordable housing grants, any kind of major grant that's what the planning department, a big responsibility of the planning department. And Cranston is just absent every time it's announced in the newspaper who's receiving major grants. We also, as a member of the city council, and I know I'm a little bit out of date, but there's a real problem with honesty from the planning department, either hiding proposals particularly in the solar field. And what I was opposed to that, but rational people could be in favor of it. But what was done instead was an attempt to put allowing these huge solar projects into a larger rewrite of the chart of uses of permissible uses, and the council had to drag that out of the planning director. On other occasions, we were told that certain proposals would be coming, and then nothing happened. That was particularly on reducing parking requirements in the city and conservation, what's it called? Conservation subdivision zoning. So what we need is we need a pro, we need somebody who's going to give it straight to the plan commission, the city council, the mayor, what their professional opinion is. In most city halls, the planning department is the brains of the operation. Here, that's not the case. They're absent. You don't hear them come forward with proposals. And I'm not saying that every proposal would be a good proposal, but they have the knowledge and the access to information that is critical for someone on the city council who's not a planner to make decisions. So I really hope you'll hire someone who doesn't just have a degree and some experience, but has a track record of trying to make of coming up with ideas and trying to make the community better. Thank you.
Mr. Stikos, could you simply state your name and your address for the minutes?
Oh,
I'm sorry I didn't mention that right off the bat.
really completely screwed this up. Stephen Stikos, 37 Ferncrest Avenue.
Thank you, Councilman Stikos. Because I allowed Councilman Stikos to comment on this matter, is there anybody else here who came to talk about this? Okay, thank you. We can now move to the next item on the agenda. Next item on the agenda is Park and Recreation Advisory Commission. Every 2 years, I believe we elect someone to serve on the Park and Rec Advisory Commission. Last time we elected Thomas Barberi to that position. He is not here right now, so I'm not sure if he's interested in seeking that post. We could continue that to the next meeting to make sure that he would actually be interested, unless there's somebody here who really wants to serve on Park and Rec who isn't already on it. Okay, somebody want to continue this to the next meeting?
Motion to continue.
Motion continue made by Commissioner Renzulli. Seconded by Commissioner Zales. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. At this point, we are now going to get into the meat and potatoes of our meeting. Usually, so the public understands, I anticipate the entire meeting will take until about 9:30 to 10 o'clock. I will probably have a break somewhere between 8:30 and 9, probably after ordinance recommendations, possibly the first couple of things on zoning. So first up is the can and self-storage application preliminary plan. And I'll ask the staff to give us an overview of this preliminary plan.
All right. This is the preliminary plan of the major land development, 530 Wellington self-storage. Basically, it's a demolition of select like attached structures and redevelopment of this like larger existing former mill building into a self-storage facility with an accessory office and parking and landscaping. Here's a zoning map, an M2 zone, mostly surrounded by M2. There's significant barriers. The I-95 highway on the east side, on the west side, and then the Northeast Corridor on the east side, which is a little easier to see in the future land use map here. The future land use maps is designated a special redevelopment area. I'll go more into that a little later. There's an aerial view, kind of like the front view, and the rear of the existing property. You can see the one side, you can see the Northeast Corridor. On the other side, you can see I-95. I can do that, yes. Here's the northern corner of the property. Street view of the corner by Lawrence Street. And see the little entrance. And here's the southern entrance of to the property. Here's briefly an existing condition. You see the items in red, kind of surrounded items. Those highlight demolitions So there's some smaller structures that are going to see some demolition, but the majority of the structure is going to stay as is. And here's the proposed plan. And a landscaping plan. Briefly, I wanted to talk about a couple of comments that came up during our technical review meeting. Technical review committee, if you're not familiar, that's our like a meeting that we have early on where we solicit comments from other departments and other staff members. And several things came up, but two key things that I want to talk about came up. There's a fire hydrant at the south end of the property. Our fire marshal basically asked for that fire hydrant to be assessed. And if the hydrant's in poor condition or it's beyond repair, they asked to have it removed. This will come later as a condition. And then another thing that was requested was that the existing sidewalks and curbing, there's some sidewalks and curbing, and just making sure that those are brought up into compliance with city standards. And everything else was is already reflected on the existing preliminary plan. Everyone should have. And this is the location of the fire hydrant, by the way, on the south end of the property. All right, moving into the analysis. So as I've talked about, properties already, it is industrial use. It is within an M2 zone, our general industrial zone, and it is in the special redevelopment area, which I'll talk about a bit more later. And there's buffers, I-95 and Northeast Corridor, the east and west. Most of the surrounding area is commercial and industrial uses, though to the north of the development, there are some residential uses, but they're within the industrially zoned, and they're still industrially zoned. And there's already a approved preliminary plan for more self-storage just south of this property. Yeah, and generally like self-storage uses, they create few vehicle trips, produce few nuisances. So especially compared to other like types of industrial uses. So rather consistent with the surrounding area. And consistent with the zoning ordinance, it's a by right land development project consisting of redevelopment of an existing building. And there are some non-conforming setbacks, but there are pre-existing non-conforming, and no additions are proposed. So it's consistent with the zoning ordinance. The proposal is consistent with the comprehensive, is also consistent with the special redevelopment area. This special redevelopment area was originally created because in the 2012 comp plan, there was belief within the city that there would be a new MBTA commuter rail station in that area. So they designated the area for special redevelopment, in the case that belief that this commuter rail station would be built there. But as of now in the state rail plan, there's no, and it is in the state rail plan, but from what we know, there's no current proposals to actually put a station there. There's nothing like no material proposals for a transit station there. And there's also presently some contamination on the site, hazardous substances that may restrict any potential residential use of the subject property. And it's also kind of a high nuisance location surrounded by industrial uses. And it's also, I-95 Northeast Corridor is a lot of noise, and also some air pollution we see from the highways. So, while the use itself is not necessarily explicitly encouraged by this, hope for transit-oriented development in this area, it is overall kind of compatible with that, and it's not explicitly prohibited in any way. Especially considering that there are still no plans for rail station in that area. Yeah, and there's also a policy that I believe is so we believe it also conforms to the policies, the one policy. So access to the site is achieved. Access to the site is achieved from Station Street, on Clarence Street at the corners, entrance and an exit. Then there's also part of the building that's that you can access down here from Wellington Avenue. And then there's an exit only that'll be fenced off down here. That is for emergency vehicle use only. And generally, we believe that the circulation for vehicles is adequate. And we believe that because of the new installation of sidewalks that are proposed along Clarence Avenue and Station Street, this is Clarence Avenue and Wellington Avenue. We believe that this is a significant upgrade to what's there, because as of now, there's a pretty disconnected sidewalk network over there. And as you see on the next slide, previously the property has had some issues with vehicles parking either on the sidewalk, or in the case of this image, they're parking on in the public right of way, using should be sidewalk as a public use. But with this new proposal, most of that should go away. And overall, because of the type of use and because most of the entrances are located, on this side of the property and inside over here, where there are parking lots, the parking that we saw on the sidewalks and in other places, since there's no more entrances along Clarence and Wellington Avenue, those should go away. The issue with the parking should go away. Otherwise, the property will also be surrounded by 6-foot high chain link fence with barbed wire to prevent unauthorized access. This is something that's not reflected in the plans yet, but that we want to recommend as a condition. This is something we missed during our technical review with the applicant. Is there's currently an ADA curb ramp on Lawrence Street up here, and on the plans there's no connecting curb ramp proposed, and we are recommending that a connecting curb ramp on the northern side is added as well. On the southern side, the way the driveway is proposed to be arranged, this curb ramp right here will be aligned with the entrance to the driveway. But the way the corner comes in, you could actually do an aligning crosswalk right there to connect to the existing sidewalk network. Generally, we also believe that there's not going to be any significant environmental impact for this proposal. And overall, we believe that the proposal is going to be a significant improvement to the existing conditions there. Particularly, there's no wetlands or rare species. It's outside of the floodplain. And the applicant's working with RIDEM to provide any environmental remediation on the site. And specifically looking at the proposed stormwater management plan. Currently a lot of the structures, the stormwater, the existing conditions of the stormwater is rather poor condition and possibly even non-functional according to their stormwater report. With this proposal, a lot of the runoff is going to be managed, and it's going to be a lot of it's also going to be filtered, and before it runs is going to be filtered into Fenner Pond. Currently, the existing condition, it just filters directly into Fenner Pond, but with this stormwater plan, it should there should be some filtering as well. And the proposal should also avoid spreading any contaminants that are in surrounding soils, groundwater, either through mediation or through the particular details of the stormwater plan. And overall, there's also a proposed 2.7% reduction in of impervious area, which should also help with runoff in the area. And additionally, they've also received their release permit from RIDEM. Moving into the findings of fact, the notice has been properly posted, and proposal is consistent with the comprehensive plan's future land use map designation, special redevelopment district, and reviews that believe that the proposed use of self-service storage facilities is compatible with the future land use map designation, that it's consistent with the zoning ordinance, and that there's no environmental impacts are anticipated. Proposal will be subject to all state and local regulations pertaining to environmental impacts, wetlands, and erosion control. And the natural heritage map shows there's no rare species located on the site. Proposal will not result in creation of individual lots with such physical constraints to development of building on those lots according to pertinent regulations and building standards will be practical. The design and location of the building, utilities, drainage, and other improvements will conform to local regulations for mitigation of flooding and soil erosion. And the proposal will have adequate permanent physical access to Wellington Avenue, Station Street, and Clarence Street, all of which are public city streets. And the proposal provides for safe and adequate circulation for vehicle traffic. So staff recommend approval of this major land development project.
You want to, yep, before you do that. From the applicant.
So do the presentation, then we do the applicant, then we do the recommendation, and there'll be questions in between. Public comment. Is the applicant present and want to be heard?
Good evening, President, members of the Planning Commission. For the record, my name is Robert Murray. I'm with the firm of Taft and McSally, located at 21 Garden City Drive in Cranston. I'm here tonight on behalf of the owner applicant of the subject petition at 530 Wellington Avenue, Can-Am RI LLC. With me this evening are several people representing this application. First, seated behind me is Mr. Michael Job, the principal of Can-Am RI LLC and the developer of this project. More about him in a moment. Chris Reynolds is one of his associates also here. Chris is on site working almost daily on this project. You're going to hear in a few minutes from Joseph Casali, the project engineer, who's going to run you through a very nice PowerPoint presentation. As Jonas was going through his presentation, I couldn't help but think about this morning in the Boston Globe, quiz about how many Dunkin' Donuts there were in Rhode Island. And my son in New York guessed 750. And when I told him there probably weren't 20 on Block Island, he reduced his number. My wife guessed 220. There's actually 159 Dunkin' Donuts in Rhode Island. I offer that because, in fairness to Jonas, he brought a very technical approach to his presentation. My mind focused more on the whole than the donut itself, and I'd like to take a step back and talk about the donut a little bit. This is a wonderful opportunity for the city. It is a project that has bonuses up and down the aisle in terms of wins, environmental, aesthetics, regeneration of an old building. It is in every way positive. It is a permitted use first and foremost. Understand Jonas reflected on the transit-oriented development concept in the comp plan. That's all well and good. Those things usually take governmental money. For the record, we taxpayers are not putting any money into this project. It's all my client. So that's another benefit. That is not to say there aren't appropriate places somewhere for transit-oriented development. The fact that this property probably was never suited for that concept consideration, but just the environmental challenges that my client has dealt with and improved and cleaned up on this site. Nothing else happens is a win. As Sally will explain, besides contamination and needing to get permits from DEM, 18 of the 21 underground storage tanks have already been removed at my client's expense. We were here last June. We received master plan approval from this commission unanimously. I don't think Mr. Barberry was here that night, but I think all the other members were. Obviously, Ms. Renzulli just joined us this evening. Welcome. But since the master plan, my client has gone forward to get, with the assistance of Mr. Casali's engineering firm, the necessary outside permits. And we're back here tonight asking for preliminary approval. After Mr. Casali's presentation, I will talk about the standards that you're required to, the findings you're required to make under the statute. In the staff report, Jonas has done a nice job of citing those and the reasons why in your findings of fact you should embrace those. But at this point, Mr. Chairman, with your permission, I'm going to ask Mr. Casali to come up. Mr. Job is available from an operational, and Mr. Reynolds are available from an operational point, talk about the actual activities that will go forward on this site. But with your indulgence, Mr. Chairman, just ask Mr. Casali to be able to run through a quick PowerPoint.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission. Just for the record, my name is Joe Casali. I'm a registered professional engineer with offices at 300 Post Road in Warwick. And if I may, Mr. President, just as Attorney Murray said, a quick PowerPoint presentation. Jonas, if you would. No. There we go. Beautiful technology. So as Attorney Murray said, that's the existing site, specifically Assessors Plat 3, Lot 107. It's a big piece, just under 5.5 acres. You can see the current building envelope, hence the existing nonconformities, as Jonas spoke of earlier. What exists today is, we all know it as that big 3-story masonry building. It's over 100,000 square feet. Most of that is to remain. There are different encumbrances within the site. We have different sewer easements that exist. There's communication easements and the old water tower, which is now currently a cell tower. Those that just came up at red, those are all of the outbuildings that have been or will soon be removed and disposed of. There's also a couple portions of some overhead canopy that's going to be demolished, so that way we can leave just a core structure. As Attorney Murray related, there was various underground storage tanks that have been removed and disposed of. This is an existing above ground tank that's set to be demolished. That's a rendition of what we expect the site to look like when complete. I'm sure many of you have seen the initial siding that's already going on. I was by the site through 95 earlier today, and it's already made quite an impression. As we spoke of, this is the existing site. We're going to have different customer staff parking, ADA requirements in that front lot. That's a visitor parking area that'll be behind the gate. Should anyone need to come in after hours or speak with the office. We've got additional 14 spaces there, auxiliary spaces, an additional 9, and another 10 spaces in front. As you know, Mr. President, code doesn't specifically speak to This use, we went to the ITE manual for this size building, this particular use. You're looking at roughly 13 to 30 spaces. We're proposing well over that at 45 spaces. There's also an area to the east of the parcel that's going to be for outdoor boat or RV storage. We have a loading dock proposed. And as highlighted in the TRC meeting, the curb and sidewalk along Wellington Ave and Clarence Street will be removed and replaced so that we can have one continuous strip right along both of them. That's the Clarence Street portion. That portion of Wellington that exists today that's in reasonably good condition is going to remain. Those final limits can be worked out with staff when we need to. In terms of a landscaping plan, local landscape architect provided, that we'll have landscaping fully compliant everywhere we can to the maximum extent practicable. Same with the perimeter type fence with different type entrances and security gates, typical to a storage facility to have everything secure. And then in terms of sewer, the existing use is obviously a much heavier use than what we're going to have just for that office. And so while we're fully connected today, one of the elements we would ask if you were to give any type of approval tonight, Mr. President, would be the conditional upon approval from Veolia Water. We're still working out the final sewer lines in that office building. Same with water. We have a 12-inch main that exists right outside of Wellington and another one on Clarence. We are currently hooked up and domestic and fire protection is well underway. However, again, if any approvals are given, we would respectfully request it be contingent upon final Providence Water approval. We were lucky enough to actually speak with the marshal today as a little update to the staff recommendation. He requested that we just keep that existing middle hydrant. And so we are going to remove and dispose those auxiliary hydrants, make sure that middle one is working. We'll run everything through Providence Water. Also, we have no backflow preventers for potable water going into the office. So we'll be filing an application with Providence Water, and that should be ready by final plan approval. As stated, that drainage is completely being removed and replaced. We've infiltrated to the maximum extent practicable the environmental land use restriction and the localized contaminants, as well as those that are budding. DEM cautioned us not to have all of the stormwater management appurtenances infiltrate. So that first one will, the bioretention filter, these second two, the sediment forebay and the lined sand filter, are all lined, so they will infiltrate the water, clean it, but then the bottom will have a liner on it and subdrains, so that water doesn't interact with anything subsurfacely. Ultimately, everything connects back to that 21-inch drain line that it does today. And with that reduction in impervious areas, you can see that we'll not only have a cleaner water leaving the site, we'll have less water in terms of peak runoff and less water in terms of total volume. And that's because of some of those infiltration practices. And those are the volume calcs right there. So lastly, just as Attorney Murray said, we were back before you in March for pre-app. Master plan came shortly after in June. We still have, while we have a letter of water availability from Providence Water, we will be filing for those backflow preventers and hydrants. Veolia Water for your sewer. There is our RIPDES permit we received in January. And then here before you tonight, Mr. President, for our preliminary plan approval and hopefully requesting a final plan delegated to the administrative officer. I know that was a lot in one breath, but I would be happy to answer questions.
Do any of my fellow colleagues have any questions for the witness at this time? Okay, I have just a couple of questions as I continue to educate myself on stuff like this. Stormwater runoff?
Yeah.
In the stormwater report, it talks about requests for waivers. Those waivers are requested to the DEM. It's not requested to us, right?
That's correct.
Okay. And I saw the numbers that flashed by the screen. I have them here. One thing that's a problem for somebody like myself, who's a layman on these things, how significant is the reduction in stormwater runoff when you look at this? Like for an average person, because sometimes I've driven by there and it's been some like water in the street and stuff. So I just want to see how much of an impact you think those kind of reductions are going to have.
You know, if I were to put a cubic foot into layman's terms, it'd be something like a basketball. So when you're looking at 2,000 cubic feet or 11,000 cubic feet in a 1-year storm, you could assume that through that 24-hour period, we would have the volume less than, say, 11,000 basketballs out there. Most of the times when we're discharging into a freshwater wetland, we want to mimic the existing condition. It's not acceptable to DEM to dry out a wetland or to add water to it. For a community, it's a little bit different. State highway, you know, the least amount is best. So while you see some significant reductions to design point 1, which is that 21-inch pipe, you see more of a mimicked conditions to Wellington Ave. So I think this is a really good start in terms of reductions of volumes and reductions of peaks. And not every site can do that. Only if you can infiltrate can you reduce volume. Sometimes you have a high water table. In this case, we had what we thought could be soluble environmental concerns, and so we didn't want to push more stormwater runoff there. But I think in terms of 15,000 cubic feet in a 100-year storm event is pretty significant.
Okay. And what I remember in the report is that this is being achieved by a combination of things. One is a 2.7% reduction in impervious surface.
Yep.
But you also did some other things. Could you just explain that quickly?
Yeah, so the treatment train of the drainage, so one, the green areas are all landscaped areas, so that's a real big help to take almost 3% of this 5 acres and infiltrate it naturally now into the ground. But then you convey everything through those catch basins and pipes, and the first appurtenance it hits is that bioretention filter, which will clean the water and it'll infiltrate it into the ground. And then it moves into this forebay and then the sand filter. Unfortunately, because of the environmental concerns, those are lined. So the water moves through the soil, cleans itself naturally, but then it doesn't infiltrate into the ground. It's attenuated because it takes its time to move through the system. But ultimately, the volume is still there. So with those different appurtenances, including the catch basins with the deep sumps, you can see how much cleaner that water will be, because it'll be under today's today's standards. And this is a great adaptive reuse and what you can do if the owners are willing.
All right. That's the questions I had.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Mr. Murray, do you have any other witnesses, or you?
No. Obviously, Mr. Job and Mr. Reynolds are here. You know, we are ready to the inside of the building's been cleaned up. Obviously, anybody can buy. The skin is on the outside of the building. So when I met with Mr. Job and Mr. Reynolds yesterday, the materials going to be on site very shortly to start the outside of the building. So they're anxious to see forward. I just want to emphasize, as you get back to the staff report, the findings of fact, those requirements that you have to satisfy yourself. First, is this towards the comprehensive plan? As it is, Jonas has outlined that in the staff report. It's obviously in conformance with the zoning ordinance. Self-storage is a permitted use under the zoning code. While the statute talks about final plan, even at this preliminary stage, I think the commission can be comfort and recognize that there are significant environmental benefits. There will certainly be no significant environmental impacts by this project. We clearly have access to a public street, and we are not creating a lot here that is unbuildable for development purposes. So when you look at 45-2360, this, you know, the required findings this commission should make at this stage, I think they comfort that all those findings can be made. Ask conclusion of Mr. Jonas's comments and recommendation that you embrace his findings of fact and approve the preliminary plan for this project.
One quick question before I turn it over to see if there's any public comment. The first requirement in Mr. Jonas's report there speaks of approvals from Providence Water and Viola Water. Is that consistent with what Mr. Casali requested, that we condition approval upon
Yeah.
Viola Water and Providence? Is that language sufficient for you?
Sure. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, on those conditions that are set forth in the staff report are perfectly acceptable to the applicant and the owner. You know, we have water today, we have sewer today. It's just the next evolution of approval. You know, it's almost through the building permit process that those things get satisfied. So with your permission, if you would condition positive approval with those conditions, we'd have no objection. And we reviewed all of them, participated in the development plan review meeting. We've spoken to the fire marshal, so you know, we're comfortable with these conditions.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Is there any questions from my colleagues? Comments? Okay. We'll do public comment at this time. Is there anybody here in the room that would like to make public comment on this storage proposal? I see none. Mr. Lima, do you see anyone on public? There's a lot of people ready to make public comment, but it's probably not about the storage proposal.
I see no public comment.
Okay. All right, we will now proceed then. Thank you. To staff, please give us your recommendation.
Our recommendation is to approve the preliminary plan and under the following conditions. Just full screen this. And it started at the beginning. This is my approval and then I'll fix it later. Under the following conditions, all outside approvals from relevant state and local agencies shall be provided, particularly the final design review approval from the Providence Water Supply Board, proposed water service from the City of Cranston, Department of Public Works and VLA Water for proposed sewer service. 2, existing curbing and sidewalks along Wellington Avenue and Clarence Street shall be reconstructed to standards of Department of Public Works. 3, provision of a written assessment of the fire hydrants to the south end of the property. If the fire hydrants determined to be beyond repair, shall be removed by the applicant. 4, provision of an ADA compliant sidewalk ramp along Wellington Avenue parallel to the northern curb cut on Moran Street.
Thank you. Does my colleagues have any further comments or questions at this time for staff or comments in general? Okay, I guess it's vote time or discussion. Any discussion? We can proceed to a vote. Okay. Do I have a motion regarding this
Motion to approve.
with the conditions as recommended by staff, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Second, Commissioner Exter. Any further discussion on this matter? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor signify by.
Hold on,
Okay.
motion to approve with the you're accepting the staff's findings of fact. Is that
Correct.
right?
Okay, yes. Staff's finding of fact and conditions. Okay, that's the exact motion you should always be making. Okay.
Unless you don't want to.
No, that's
Accept.
okay. When I disagree with their findings, I make it pretty clear. Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. The ayes have it. Congratulations, Mr. Murray. Okay, next, we will now proceed to ordinance recommendations, which is Caraway Drive is the first up. We'll get a very quick Overview from staff. We'll then hear from the applicant. And then we will go from there. You have to use the whole.
The request from Margaret Scalia is to rezone this parcel from A80, which is single-family residential requiring 80,000 square foot lots, to A20, which is also single-family residential requiring 20,000 square foot lots. This is an overview of the site. You can see it sits on the edge of Alpine Estates. I can't- yeah, wait. It's described as being at the terminus of Caraway Drive because the access to the site is from Caraway Drive. It is forested right now. The zoning map has it mapped as A80. The future land use map has it mapped as single-family residential, 3.63 to 1 units per acre. And I first want to comment before I jump into my analysis that this application was slightly delayed. We received this in the planning department before the 2024 comprehensive plan was adopted. There was a little bit of a delay in the sense that we received it, the planning director thought someone had withdrawn it, a family member picked it up, but council then said it was not withdrawn. And so I wanted to say that the planning department recognizes this application was in and complete before the 2024 comprehensive plan was adopted. And therefore my recommendations and analysis are based on the plan that was in effect at that time. And I find that this application is consistent with the future land use map designation. The comprehensive plan calls for zoning to be updated to be consistent with the existing neighborhood. Policy H 5.2 says we should review zoning for existing residential neighborhoods to ensure the zoning matches as closely as possible the dimensions and unit types of what has already been built. And that in the land use section, that we should preserve the existing density of established neighborhoods. So access to this property is off Caraway Drive in Alpine Estates. Alpine Estates is developed with the 20,000 square foot lot size minimum and generally the 125 foot of frontage that's required for that zone. So rezoning at A20 would allow development consistent with the neighborhood development pattern. Also went through the considerations of the applicable purposes of zoning, and I won't read these all to you. They're in the memo, but certainly this zone change allows for the orderly growth. There are public services available, including water and sewer. And this parcel hasn't been particularly called out in the comprehensive plan for having significant natural, historic, cultural, or scenic value above that of any other forest land. And I want to mention that forest preservation is co-equal goal along with providing housing choices. And Cranston has experienced slow housing development that has not kept up with household formation, leaving housing production as an acutely unmet community need.
Okay, we will hear from, is the applicant present and would like to be heard?
Yes, good evening, Mr. President, members of the commission. My name is Enrico Scungio. I'm an attorney. I represent the applicant. My office is located at 146 Westminster Street in Providence, Rhode Island. I'm here this evening with Mr. Pimento. Edward Pimento has submitted his report to all of you. I believe it's part of your packages. I'm also here this evening with Mr. Scalia. He's sitting in the back there. Mr. Scalia is a longtime realtor in the city of Cranston, over 63 years. He's been a realtor in the city of Cranston. He insisted on coming tonight despite his age of being over 93 years old. He's here also tonight with his son, Robert Scalia, who is also a real estate broker in the city of Cranston, primarily in the city of Cranston. I could shed some light to the commission if need be on the issue of the filing of the application, but I hear from the planner that the application has been submitted prior to the adoption of the plan and accepted as such. But if you have any questions about that, at the end, I could certainly address those issues. And I would like to just hand it over to Mr. Pimento to make his presentation. Thank you.
Good evening, Mr. President, members of the City Planning Commission. I know that this commission is well-versed in the Alpine Estates neighborhood, but we do have a record that we're preparing. So to that end, I went ahead. We obviously know how the Alpine Estates neighborhood is constituted, but I wanted hard documentation. So I spent several nights and looked at and analyzed every single lot in the Alpine Estates neighborhood proper. It's in your package. There's 16 pages. Did the analysis. 62% or 224 of these approximately 361 parcels are in fact right on point at 20,000. Some are slightly larger. I didn't want to play games to skew any numbers. So it averages out to about 30,000 with some of the slightly larger lots. But the reality is the neighborhood is a half-acre zoning neighborhood, which was how this was established over the last several decades. There are 3 parcels in question that have been the focus before this commission over the last several years that are landlocked, can only be accessed, in fact, through this neighborhood, and therefore are an extension of the Alpine Estates neighborhood, including the one in question tonight. It is for that reason that back in the 2010 comp plan as amended through 2012, it was recommended and deemed very appropriate that these parcels also be likewise rezoned to the A20. For the life of me, I don't know why that wasn't accomplished at the time. I mean, the law in question is once you deem an inconsistency, you're supposed to correct within 18 months, but for whatever reason, it wasn't done. But obviously, the comp plan recommends that it be rezoned to half-acre. A zoning that's inconsistent with the hard vetting of the comprehensive plan that culminates in the future land use map, which dictates what the usage of the property should be. And then the zoning is the regulatory tool that enforces that. But the regulatory tool is supposed to enforce and foresee the vision that's been put forth via that comprehensive plan. And as an added element to that, which is interesting because most communities don't do this, this community then prepared a list and said, you know what, we want to be very specific about this because there could be a few different zoning designations that would be consistent or corroborate that land use classification. So it was very specific in that list that this property be rezoned from A80 to the A20 zoning designation. To that end, I know my learned colleague has already read some of the quotes out of the comprehensive plan. I too excerpted a number of them. They're in the report. I could read them verbatim into the report if you wish, that it's really part of the record. But having said that, I stand by my strong convictions that I believe this community, as every community does, puts a lot of effort when you prepare a comprehensive plan. In so doing, it's a lengthy and arduous process. It involves public participation. You look at properties. You look at the needs of the community. There's a multitude of needs, from commercial to residential, industrial, open space. Ultimately, it's a balance test. Where are we going to locate housing? It's the #1 crisis in the state of Rhode Island now. We're still about 20 to 25,000 units shy, and the number grows every day. It's 75% of my work now statewide is housing and affordable housing because we need it. And it isn't on an ad hoc basis that we pursue these developments. I do developments that are multiple units, and before the shovels hit in the ground, there are people crying for the units, and they get filled up that quickly. That's how desperate housing is required. This community vetted out this property, determined that these properties were appropriate. It's going to add a handful more of house lots to this neighborhood. There's nothing that says that these additional house lots cannot be accommodated. I understand the past experiences here. There's been issues and concerns about the vetting of this data because the data was back in 2010, 2012. Although we are vested in the old comp plan, I made it an effort. I thought it was my responsibility now that you have a new comp plan, and I vetted that thoroughly. And quite honestly, that new comp plan supported my position again. There is no constraints that would preclude development's property, but development would be added. We're talking a handful of lots. So I stand on my report and I stand on my humble professional opinion that I believe it is appropriate to rezone this. And as further buttressing that, just this past March of 2024, the state legislature once again re-emphasized that all local land use decisions should be based on the comprehensive plan and the future land use map. So that's just reemphasizing that conclusion. So I don't know if the commission has any questions.
Before we give questions, applicant's expert, first I'd like to ask our solicitor. There's been some confusion because what's based on what I saw the documents is that this was submitted at some point in September. And then up here it says resubmitted October, I believe, 29th. So could you first explain what happened here? Because it sounds like there was at one point a withdrawal or a resubmission.
So, well, I think the applicant should actually explain it because he explained it to me. So I think maybe Rick can explain it, and then I will tell you why I made my recommendation as I did.
So the application was presented to the city clerk in the end of August 2024. August 28th, the city clerk sent an email to the director of planning asking him what was going on with it because he hadn't signed off on it. At that time, hindered by my absence being out of the country for a couple of weeks, the director was unable to get in touch with me personally. He did when I got back from that 2-week hiatus, and he ultimately on September 18th, he had two concerns. One was the address I had used on the application was Pippin Orchard Road because that's the tax assessor's designation for this lot, and he wanted it to be the terminus of Caraway Drive. And the second issue we had was with respect to the map, which was submitted. It was submitted pursuant to the checklist requirements, but that map was too large for him to advertise. So I satisfied both of those conditions. And then on September 18th, he said that everything would suffice and he would sign off on the application. So I anticipated that the application was moving forward. Subsequent to that, there were hearings on the new comp plan. I believe my client, Mr. Scalia, didn't attend that, but didn't participate in those hearings. And after that, through confusion between the director and Mr. Scalia, who is again 93 years old, someone on behalf of someone at the request of Mr. Scalia came and withdrew the petition. I wasn't privy to any of that whatsoever. And as soon as I found out, which was in late October of 2024, I went back to planning, went to my client, got the application that was withdrawn, went back to the director, submitted the application and told him that it was never run by me. I never authorized that. In fact, I had instructed my client not to withdraw that application. So the director at that point accepted the application as if it was filed in August as it was, and said that he said, "Were you claiming that you had vested rights?" And I said, "Yes." So that's what happened.
So based upon that representation, I advised Beth to make her or do her analysis based upon the timing of when the application was submitted. Keeping in mind that this is just a recommending body to the city council. The city council can make their own determination through their own solicitor whether and where the application was complete or withdrawn. They certainly have the right to do that. They certainly have the right, even if the application was filed complete in August before the comprehensive plan was changed. They certainly have pretty much the right to do whatever they want. It's a legislative act. And one of these lots, don't know if it was this one or not, I believe Mr. Murray had it. They took an appeal to the Supreme Court and that was quickly dismissed. So clearly for our analysis, we're a recommending body. We had to pick a point in time. The point in time, given what Mr. Scungio had said, I thought it was best practices that at least the planning department make their analysis. Certainly you as a board can make a different determination if you wish. But either way, it's only a recommendation to the city council.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Marcello. Just one clarification. I've heard the term like legal vesting. I'm not familiar with legal vesting of a proposed zone change in an outdated comp plan.
I agree with that.
Okay.
Maybe it's not like, zoning is vested. Obviously, zoning vests pursuant to state law and the statute, which vests depending on when your application is considered complete. They can certainly argue differently, but I don't believe an application for a zone change vests in and of itself under applicable law, but certainly Rick or Eddie can certainly argue differently on that.
Okay. I'll ask a couple of questions and then I'll turn over to my colleagues. You would agree that under the current comp plan, this is to stay at A80, not A20, correct? It was not part of the it was not part of the listed parcels to have a zone change, correct?
Yes,
Okay.
the future land use map in the list has been altered in 13 specific incidences. So the old inconsistencies listing had 1,381 separate properties that were determined to be inconsistent. And there were 13 changes to that list, and it's down to like 1,360, whatever it is, 68.
Okay. And the other question I have for either one of you is, are you aware that the Cranston School Committee in October 10th, 2023, in their meeting minutes said that Orchard Farms is at capacity, the elementary school right there?
I'm not aware of that. I can only offer to this body what is detailed in the comprehensive plan about the education system
Mhm.
and the growth, because that's the information I have to rely on, because that would be the data or the information that I would have to then utilize in concluding ultimately the land use element and then culminate in the future land use map. So for there to have been amendment to remove this, then the information that's been adopted, reviewed and adopted in that comprehensive plan should be in support of that. But actually it says differently. It says that there's been a decline in the public education system, and it says that the elementary education has been at a steady pace and very stable. That's what's in the comp plan. That's why it's in my report.
Are you aware that there are only two elementary schools west of 295? No, okay, because the minutes of that meeting is that those two schools are at capacity. So although the entire school system is either stable or slightly stable at the K-5 area, or it's slightly declining overall, the schools in the western half of the city is where there has been a lot of growth and now is at capacity.
I can only offer it and add again that in your comp plan, it also talks about how when there is a constraint in one portion of the city, other accommodations are made in other parts of the city, and it gave specific examples of when that was done. It didn't state that when one section of the city is at constraints, then that part of the city has to, think differently from an education perspective. That's not what the comp plan stated. That's in my report as well. So.
Okay. Are there any other questions from my colleagues to the applicant or comments at this time? Okay, we will now shift to public comment. We'll start in the room. Please come up and state your name and your address.
My name is Paul Shamarian, and I'm at 10 Pine Ridge Drive,
Could you spell the last name Shamarian for the minutes?
Shamirian. And my property is just north, just north of the top of the green line. So I'm just right at the outer banks of it. So I just have a couple of comments. One, when Alpine was originally started in the early 80s, I don't know what the details were at that time, but the Planning Commission at that time, there is only one egress out to get out of Alpine and to get in through Situate Ave. So that's one of the major problems. I think one time they wanted to open onto Plainfield Pike, and for some reason it didn't go through. So you have all those households coming in and out of one egress. I don't know how that ever passed the fire department. So one of my comments was just as you mentioned earlier, the school, which Orchard is right south of that green square, is at capacity. from what I've heard in the paper and what you had just stated. My main concern is you're gonna start a precedent if you pass this square of property, because there is another rectangular shaped property right below it, which is south of this property and north of the school. And that is, their exit would be through Sage Drive. So if this passes, you got, I don't know, 20, 25 lots there. You have roughly, how many lots are they saying? I don't know, say 15, 20 lots. Average 2 cars per household. You have another 30 cars trying to get out of that one entrance. I don't know how many of you have ever tried getting out of there early in the morning. It's not fun sometimes. And so if you pass this property, what's to prevent the people that own the property just south of this through Sage? You're gonna have another 10, 15 houses, cars coming out of there. And you're just gonna cause a bigger mess through Alpine. I know one of my thoughts were if you had a line of traffic coming out onto Pippin Orchard Road, but there's a waterway, so there's wetlands, so there's no way of getting out. So you're gonna cause just a lot more gridlock into Alpine Estates. There's a problem as it is now, and you're just gonna add more. The other land, just like I said, south, there's probably other properties within Alpine Estates. And if this passes, you're gonna have one every so often that are gonna wanna expand out. But the biggest problem is the one egress coming in and out. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, we were only notified.
Name and
sorry.
address.
My name is Annette Osberg. I live on Belle Isle Way. So we were only notified on Saturday about this meeting. So attendance, for those of you who have been previous, you know we had quite the crowd. We have a lot of people on Zoom, but we also have flu and COVID going around Alpine. So we decided, you guys are gonna stay home, you're gonna call in, and we took it for the team. So some of you may know the backstory of this lot. This actual property came up for zone change many years ago, and it was denied. Now, someone who will remain nameless, and I think the man that was sitting here was alluding to him, made the decision at the developer's request to add this parcel and the adjacent parcel into the comprehensive plan, changing the zoning from A80 to A20. Now think about that for a minute. How would you feel if your neighbor went to zoning, the zoning board turned them down, but then somebody in the city planning department snuck it in the comprehensive plan? And this is the wording they use. And this is what makes me mad. And I'm sorry, like, I've been here multiple times and the steam just keeps building. AP 35, lots 3, 2, change the land use classification from residential less than 1 unit per acre to residential 1 unit. Do any of you even know what that means? How are we residents supposed to know that Caraway and Sage got snuck back into the comprehensive plan? And this is the only reason we're here. So, is this how this is supposed to work? A city employee gets to overrule the city council knowing full well this parcel was rejected, but they put it in the comprehensive plan. So the previous council voted it down, but let's slip it into the comprehensive plan. Now, this parcel has since been removed from the comprehensive plan, and we know why it is. Orchard Farms is completely overcrowded, and we know it, and so is Oaklawn. We are not against expansion. So everyone makes it like, oh, the Alpine people. No, we are completely for it. Build your property, but build it the way you bought it. And don't make a quick buck of all of us who are trying to send our kids to school, trying to go to work in the morning, etc. So we know about this parcel, we know about Sage, but do you know what is behind that parcel? a 40-acre parcel that is owned by the same man that developed behind it. What would you be saying if you were him? He gets approved, Sage gets approved, well, why can't I build? It's consistent with people. The other thing nobody's mentioned, and there was a 32-page document that all of you should have seen, done by the consultant. Did you see the name Pine Ridge mentioned once? When was the first time you heard the word Pine Ridge tonight? And this gentleman mentioned it. And do you know why nobody mentions it? Because it's zoned A80. So don't say Alpine's all A20, because it's not. The abutter to this is A80. So go build your houses, build your 5. We will not fight you. And I think I can speak for all my neighbors. We won't fight you. But you want to change this. You want to go from 5 to just a handful more, which could be 15. And the guy that sits next to you has been up here multiple times trying to get his only handful extra lots. And then the person at Peppermill has done the same thing. So it's not a handful of lots. This is a lot of property. It's a lot of kids going to school. We all know our taxes everywhere in Cranston are high. We don't need to be building another school. Okay. One other thing I want to mention. If one looks at the commission's report, this commission has made almost 1,400 zoning change recommendations. Of that, there were 36 to change from A80 to A20. And over those, 30 were off of busy streets. This is not that type of development. You're going to add all these houses, and then you know the property next door is going to get approved, and then the one behind it will get approved, and then Peppermill will get approved. So what are we talking? Another 60 houses going out one way, in another way. We are asking you to send a strong message to the city council. We don't want a no recommendation. We don't want an approval. We would like a full-blown denial, because we should not be here tonight. None of us should be here, but because somebody added it to the comprehensive plan, that's why we're here. I also want to make sure all of you, including Marcella, have received our attorney letter about how you are not required to approve this because it's in the comprehensive plan. And he has done extensive research on this. This is his expertise. So he is quite familiar with this. I want to make sure everybody has the lawyer's letter. And then I also, after my colleagues are done speaking, refer you to the Zoom. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone here in the room who would like to make comment on the Caraway Drive application zoning change?
Gary DeRamo, 7 Lace Circle. Tough act to follow. She covered everything basically that I had planned on covering. As you all know, this has been a sore topic last year. It has been proven that the school is overcrowded. There is a traffic study of putting a traffic light at the end of Alpine Estates, I was told. Reasoning because of the crowded street, getting in and out of Alpine Estates. I live at 7 Lace Circle. It abuts the property that is here tonight for the zone change. When they purchased that land, as it is now, an A80, when I was looking into purchasing my house, my wife and I, 11 years ago, noticed our house was at the end of a cul-de-sac, privacy in the back. My concern was the development possibly down the road for that parcel. I went to City Hall. I saw it was an A80 zoning. I purchased my house because I was willing to live with an A80 zoning behind me, knowing I would still have some privacy. I made the investment in the city of Cranston based on the zoning that is in place. Scoralia purchased the land knowing it was an A80 zoning. In all fairness, they can build on A80. Because of what happened last year, this is getting to be a redundant situation. planning commission, the change in the comprehensive plan. I think it would be a grave injustice to the people of Alpine and the city if you approve this zone change. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there further public comment regarding the Caraway Drive issue?
Yes. Hello, good evening. Danielle Marlin, 41 Caraway Drive. I actually live right in front of Gary, who just presented, and we abut the land at the end of the cul-de-sac that's being discussed. My husband has been here many times. Unfortunately, he's traveling for business and couldn't join me. But I will reiterate that we were here either in person or through Zoom to oppose the proposed change for Peppermill. We were here previously in Zoom or in person to oppose the proposed zoning change for Sage Drive. And I'm here tonight to share with all of you that we similarly oppose the proposed zoning change for Caraway Drive. Gary and I did not compare notes, but our message is very similar. Peppermill Lane, Sage Drive, and most relevant are Caraway Drive. The parcel of land being discussed were purchased as A80 parcels. The landowners purchased these parcels understanding they were zoned as A80. Representatives from our neighborhood, as you know, have consistently been here for the past 6 years, sharing our concerns, many of which have already been presented. And we have long understood that a zoning change to Peppermill would set the precedent for a zoning change to Sage and would set a precedent to the zoning change for Caraway. So again, it's all of those particular zoning oppositions. Permitting the rezoning of Caraway is not going to benefit anyone other than the landowner themselves. Again, we've talked about the fact that there are concerns with school capacity, traffic concerns internal to and proximate to the neighborhood. So not just internal to Alpine Estates, but also Situate Ave, going all the way through to Comstock as well. As I drafted, these talking points last night, I could hear rushing water from my foundation. That's another problem that is rampant within Alpine Estates. There's a lot of high water table. Many of our neighbors have issues with flooding. And we also have a number of streets where pooling of water just occurs on a regular basis. Changing the topography and adding extra houses in that neighborhood will not help that cause. And again, all of these concerns continue to persist in our existing neighborhood, absent of new development for what it's currently zoned for, never mind changes to the zoning. So again, and mentioned earlier, I have to reiterate, I don't think that this is going to solve the affordable housing opportunity in Rhode Island by extending and changing the zoning within Alpine Estates, and in particular for this parcel. Again, similar to Gary, my husband and I bought 41 Caraway Drive, looking out at the woods next to us. Would we be upset if there was any development? Sure. But we bought it understanding that that parcel was 880, not A20. And so, again, the landowners bought that parcel understanding the same thing. And that is kind of where we're at. So again, just want to reiterate that we are opposed to this request to rezone and support the neighbors.
Thank you. Is there anyone else here who is present in the room that would like to speak on the Caraway Drive?
My name is Trisha Rugas. I reside at 33 Caraway Drive with my 3 young children and husband. Over the years, we have communicated our concerns regarding the proposed zoning change for Caraway Drive and the adjacent cul-de-sacs, both in person and via Zoom. Multiple representatives from our neighborhood, as well as previous and current council representatives, have consistently supported maintaining the existing A80 zoning classification for these parcels over the past 6 years. There are no compelling reasons to alter the zoning. The proposed change only benefits the landowner, who was aware of the A80 zoning when the parcel was purchased. Our primary concerns include school capacity, increased traffic within and near the neighborhood, the single exit and entrance for over 400 houses in the neighborhood, and the issues with flooding and pooling water due to the topography. Our children deserve to be able to play in a safe and quiet neighborhood with limited traffic. They deserve to attend a school that is not overcrowded and have classrooms that are beyond capacity. My husband and I strongly oppose the request to rezone this parcel to A20. Thank you to the committee for your time and careful consideration of this proposed change.
Thank you, ma'am. Is there anyone here who would like to make comment on the Caraway Drive?
Good evening. My name's Michael Stevens. I live at 25 Pine Ridge Drive. I was one of the first residents into Pine Ridge, very familiar with it. The open space, the 59 acres behind it is controlled by the town. Obviously, there's wetlands and a brook out there. My background's civil engineering, so I'm familiar with, situations like this. The one thing I would like to say is I would expect if you're going to ask for a zoning change, you would do your homework in terms of the impact studies. I thought the Can-Am proposal was very good. It touched all the points, but I don't know, and this is where I'm looking for feedback, are impact studies required before zoning is approved? Obviously Orchard Farms is a concern, traffic, sewer, water, will it support it? I don't know if I need to have that answer, but I would encourage the council to put that in place before they make a final consideration.
We do not require, I believe, any sort of like impact kind of studies for zone changes, but that's, we can talk about that some other day, but at this point, no, that's not required, but continue. If there's anything else you have or?
No, and
Okay.
I think the responses are consistent in terms of do it for that piece of property. There's one adjacent. At what point do you step back and say we need to look closer at this? So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room who would like to comment on Caraway Drive? I see no one in the room. Mr. Lima, let's switch to Zoom.
Christine Narcisi.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Great, thank you. My name is Christine Narcisi. I reside at 22 Caraway. I'm here tonight with my neighbors to also express my concerns and ask for your support to not change the zoning for the terminus at Caraway. You may recognize my voice. I've spoken many times at City Hall over the past 6 years against the rezoning. We've been here before for Sage and Peppermill as well. And to echo what my neighbors have said, I want to be clear that I understand owners have a right to build, and that is not what is in debate or dispute tonight. What I do not support is the rezoning of the land in order to allow for more homes. And this goes for all the land that's A80 currently in Alpine. It is going to be a cascade effect. Once one zoning is changed, the others will change as well. The argument to rezone the properties always references the comprehensive plan, but we neglect to discuss sometimes that this comprehensive plan was written for the 2010 landscape of Cranston and the 2010 Alpine. It's antiquated and outdated as a guide. It's not consistent with the growth of Alpine that exists today. And it's the same document that they use as their defense that also states that the growth in Cranston should be orderly and consistent with the purpose of the plan. So I've asked many times, and I don't feel I get an answer, what is the purpose of the rezoning? How does it benefit the community of Cranston? Honestly, I don't get an answer for that. I don't believe it does benefit the community. It benefits the landowners financially, and all it does is stress our existing systems and infrastructure. It benefits them to profit off the sale of 4 times the homes at the detriment to the existing residents and neighbors and my children. I have a multitude of concerns, most of which have already been addressed. The topography of the land changing with the water issues. My family also struggles with high water table and flooding. Their safety concerns, the availability to community resources and municipalities, traffic issues when we now have 400 plus homes with one egress in and out. But most importantly, and as been mentioned before, it's how this impacts the schools for me. I have 2 children, one at the elementary and one at the middle school. It's the major factor as to why my family moved to Cranston. And with these conundrums, I ask again, how does the expansion to build all these homes benefit us? It doesn't. The comp plan in 2010 predicted school enrollments would decline. And that again is another example of how outdated the guide is, as we know, since it's trying to be revised. My children started in the Cranston public school system in 2017. And since that time, I can tell you the Orchard Farm, most grades have 3 classrooms, and with the overcrowding, grades are starting to add 4 classrooms. It's not going to be able to handle more children and that come with these additional homes. Ms. Ashman's memo to the City Plan Commission recommends it, referencing the 2012 comprehensive plan. As my neighbor Annette pointed out, this is a plan that we have never really been notified when those changes were added in, plus the fact that it's 15 years old. We know it's expired. We know it's antiquated. Why and how is it responsible for us to make a decision this evening based on an outdated and antiquated plan that we're actively holding meetings and committees to continue to revise? I ask you to please heed these concerns and the concerns of my neighbors. As Annette mentioned, we know some of our friends can't be with us tonight, whether they're ill or traveling, but please do not vote for this zoning to go through. Please think of the existing residents that are directly and negatively impacted by the zoning change. Please think of my own 2 daughters. They're the entire reason I come to these meetings. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Mr. Lima.
Joe Nessie. Joe Narcisi, you're in the
Yes, hello, sorry. Joe Narcisi, 22 Caraway Drive. So obviously, this is not a new battle. This has been something that's been a bit of a lightning rod over the past few years, maybe even more than that. But this is, once again, all about land that was knowingly purchased with a zoning of A80. So they are not losing anything. Some of you are very familiar with the issues that we're talking about tonight. Some of you are new to this. I know my neighbors here have gone over a lot of the reasons as to, why we are against this. And I think it's important when you're looking at the history of properties like this, and you're trying to learn what's going on here, you don't look at necessarily what's happening, but why it has happened. So if this property, like the others that have been referenced, have been zoned A80, why have they not been rezoned? It was cited in a 2012 comprehensive plan along with the other properties, but it was never done. Why not? Well, to start, all of the reasons outlined by my fellow neighbors, then, the flaws of the 2012 plan aside, several different bodies, such as this and previous city councils, have turned away the proposals. This was due to the strong negative public reaction. This was due to the fact that others in your position agreed that the comprehensive plan was outdated and failed to address current needs of the community. This was also due to the fact that in the years and years of fighting over this, after countless reasons have been listed as to why it should not be rezoned, the developers have failed to produce one single reason that this should be done and would benefit the community. Not a single reason. And if they say housing crisis, let's make no mistake, these are luxury homes. They are not helping anyone. They are concerned with maximizing profits. So they stood on the basis of an outdated comprehensive plan. This property and the others like it have been removed from the new plan. Again, why? Because after all these years, these developers and the highly qualified consultants have failed to produce any reasonable benefits that outweigh all of the negative impacts that rezoning would provide. I assume you've taken up these positions on this committee to help better this community, not to rubber stamp things. I ask you to fairly examine what is being presented, and if you even have a single doubt about rezoning this property, I ask that you do please side with your community. Please say no to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Lima.
Account name Janice.
Hello, this is Janice Cataldo. I live on Sage Drive in Cranston. Thank you, Mr. President and Commissioners, for allowing me to speak. I can't count the number of times that I've testified against this zone change. We also bought a lot at A20, and Mr. Scalia bought his at A80. Mr. Pimentel stated, I don't know why Mr. Scalia never requested to have the zone change. Well, that doesn't make any sense. He did request this zone change and was denied. So there were 3 main issues that my neighbors have pointed out as traffic, school, flooding. Yes, we all experience flooding, and more development will only make it worse. DOT did a study showing that the entrance to 37 and 295 was the only busier passway besides the exit going down Situate Avenue past Alpine Estates. And we have heard that they're thinking of putting in a traffic light outside our development. The school issue, we've heard countless times, even from the superintendent. The Department of Ed did a study of what it would cost to rebuild an elementary school in Western Cranston. And back years ago, it was $50 million. I can't imagine what it would cost to build a new school now. So in summary, you can reject a zone change in an expired comprehensive plan if the comprehensive plan is outdated and the city is amending its comprehensive plan. And the comprehensive plan doesn't take into account municipal and school services. All the issues that my neighbors have pointed out as a problem with this zone change request. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, ma'am. Next, Mr. Lima.
Account name Avana.
Can you hear me?
Good evening. State your name and address.
It's Von and them, 10 Lace Circle. I'm fairly new to Alpine Estate. So I just want to address, I learned Alpine Estate as a brand new immigrant growing up at Project Chad Brown. I was fortunate enough to come over when I had coached in Pop Warner. That brought me to the neighborhood. And it was always my goal as a immigrant growing in the project housing to potentially buy a house in Alpine Estate. And I finally achieved that almost close to 20 years later down the road, being very determined and, focusing on having a good career in law enforcement and my wife being a nurse. And I bought the house not knowing that the zone would change. Had the zoning been changed, I probably would have never bought the house. And when they talk about affordable housing, I know about affordable housing. These are not affordable housing in Alpine Estate. So, and also I want to address, we got this letter on Saturday. We're both working adults, have yet to even go to the post office to get the certified letter. So it looks like this was pushed really fast. I urge the board to think about it, reconsider it. My neighbors made plenty of good points about it. I'm fairly new to the community. And again, I just hope that you guys address these issues, take into consideration and make a good judgment. Thank you.
Could you state your name again, clearly, slowly?
Vana Nem, 10 Lace Circle.
Okay, thank you. I had to ask that for the minutes. Next, Mr. Lima.
Account name Vin.
Proceed, Vin.
This is Vin McChrystal, 65 Sage Drive. I'm not going to repeat everything that's been said. I've spoken many times in front of this body and many other bodies about my opposition to the zoning change. I did want to just touch on one thing that no one has really spoken about, and that is this whole lost or withdrawn application. Lawyer out of the country for 2 weeks, couldn't contact anyone. Legal vesting, what the heck is that? And now the head planner is gone, so a lot of the history has disappeared. How convenient all this is. How convenient. I don't believe for a second that any of that happened. And I just want you to know that I'm sure the rest of the neighbors don't believe it either.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McChrystal. Is there anyone else on Zoom that would like to make public comment on the Caraway Drive application?
Jonathan.
Go ahead, Jonathan, Mr. Jonathan Witzner.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, my name's Jonathan Weitzner. I live on 1 Lace Circle. My experience with this issue is probably more lengthy than most others. I've been in my house for 33 years. And as everybody has stated, I purchased my house and there were only 2 houses at the end of Lace Circle at the time I purchased my house. And as everybody has stated, I purchased my house with the A80, knowing that behind my house, if anything was constructed, it would be under the A80 zoning. Now, I've got to say, we've come to these council meetings so many times, and my recollection many years ago was that Mr. Scalia attempted the same zoning change with all the same existing circumstances that have been brought up tonight. And as the prior speaker spoke, I think it's quite interesting that all those things were stated regarding, how it was instituted in the comprehensive plan at the very last second. I mean, with the internet and social media and all the things that were available, how it got there in the last few days is just amazing to me. Now, as all my neighbors have stated, there are so many different issues, the egress, all the topography issues. These are nothing new. These have been existing all during the time that I have lived there as the Alpine Estates has grown. But, you know, to be here tonight and to listen to these same things is just, it's astounding. You know, I implore you to, now, my understanding is that this committee recommends this to the zoning commission or city council. Is that the case?
The city council, sir.
City council. So the only thing I can implore you to do is just to please put this issue to rest and reject and not, you know, have this motion or this issue move forward anymore. So I urge you to reject this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other individuals that would like to make public comment on Caraway Drive that is on Zoom?
Teresa?
Go ahead, Teresa. Reale.
Hi, yes, Teresa Reale, 28 Caraway Drive. I'm gonna save time and just echo what my fellow neighbor said. I just want to go on the record and say I am opposed of changing the zoning on that Caraway parcel. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Are there any other individuals on Zoom that would like to make public comment on Caraway Drive? Please signify by raising your hand.
I am seeing no new public comment.
No new public comment? Okay, thank you very much. All right. Is there anybody in the room, one more time, you want to make public comment on this? Okay, thank you. We'll, if my fellow commissioners don't have any questions for the applicant, I will proceed to just ask staff to give us their quick recommendation, then we can have discussion.
Based on the findings that the rezone is generally consistent with the 2012 comprehensive plan and the purposes of zoning, staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward a positive recommendation on this application to City Council.
Would the applicant have any final comments before we begin discussion? Thank you, Mrs. Scungio. All right. We heard a lot today. For some of us, this is reminiscent of prior stuff. I'm going to make my comment first, and then the other commissioners want to speak up, and then we can have our motions. I'm going to be voting no on this. Meaning I'm going to be making a negative recommendation, a vote for a negative recommendation to City Council. I believe that based on the current comprehensive plan, this land should remain at A80. I have heard evidence that the applicant at one point withdrew this request for a zone change and then resubmitted it. But even if that is not the case, that it was not formally withdrawn properly, there is no legal vesting, to the best of my knowledge, in a recommended zone change in an outdated comp plan. I'm also aware, based on this evidence, that there is A80 zoning in this area. It is not exclusively A20. I'm also aware that the local elementary school has capacity issues. I have also heard testimony that there are traffic issues in this area because of the fact that this neighborhood only has a single entrance or exit into it and out of it. Therefore, I believe changing the zoning to A20 would be inconsistent with the comp plan that we have now, which does not, that keeps this zone, keeps this parcel as A80 and is inconsistent with land use goal 6, protect and stabilize existing residential neighborhoods. This has been a pretty I thought this thing was over when we took these 3 parcels out of the comp plan, but it's here again. Anyway, is there any of my fellow colleagues that have something to say about this one way or another? Go ahead, Commissioner Renzulli.
Thank you, President Price. I tend to agree with you on this topic. I think we do need to consider the potential unintended consequences should we approve this zone change. I do agree it's inconsistent with the current comprehensive plan. And if there is no, if vested rights is not a real thing on this topic, then we shouldn't be considering it based upon that. I have, as a parent, and just as a member of this community, brought up several times in different cases about the overcrowding in schools. We cannot be adding additional students to these schools. It does cost a lot of money to build new schools. We have bonded out to build a certain amount of schools already. The availability for more money from the state to be compensated at, I believe it's 74%, no longer exists, so we cannot build another school. I believe when the prior comp plan that the data was used for the report from the applicant, I believe Hope Highlands was still an elementary school at that time. So there was more room for students. We don't have room for these younger students. We don't have room at Western Hills either. So I would not be in favor of this zone change tonight based on those points. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other comments? Commissioner Zadalis.
Mr. Chairman, I will follow your proposal and recommend it for a different set of reasons. But to be consistent with actions we've already taken, I think it's only prudent that we reject the recommendation. So.
Okay. Anyone else? All right. Do I hear a motion to reject, first of all, to,
I
go
think
ahead.
you can do a motion to send a negative recommendation to the city
Okay.
council.
Okay, I just want to make sure you did me that findings of fact thing on me last time, so, okay. Do I have a motion to make a negative recommendation?
Motion to make a negative recommendation for the zone change. Thank you.
Motion made by Commissioner Renzulli, seconded by Commissioner Exeter. Is there any further discussion on this topic? Seeing none. All those in favor of giving a negative recommendation signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed to giving a negative recommendation? Hearing none. Unanimous. Thank you. Okay, I think we have one, I know you guys are thinking about a break. We have a little bit more time for one more before 8:30 to do a, another zone change recommendation. I hope this one is quicker. I got so excited by Alpine, I don't know where my sheet is. What's next?
Yeah, you want me to plow forward?
There it is, 135 Atwood Ave. Yes, go ahead.
Sure. I think this application should be a little more straightforward. This is an application from Michelle Lombardi at 135 Atwood Avenue. This parcel is zoned B1, single family, and its future land use is also single two-family with a density. But the request here is to change the future land use map to highway commercial and correspondingly change the zone from B1 to C2, which is neighborhood commercial. So here we are, we're across from the UPS store and Ocean State job lot. We're across from the Chase Bank. I think that's the TD Bank. That's the subject parcel. That sign is a little outdated. I drove by there today. That doesn't look like that anymore, but the house up there, I mean, it's been a commercial property for 50 years, but that's the subject property. It has a number of small businesses in it. As you can see, it's the first property as you're driving south on Atwood to be residentially zoned B1. It's across from C2 and C3. See if we can. Please advance. The future land use map, again, it's red is highway commercial. It comes down and stops right at the street across the street from this business. Here I've zoomed out on the future land use map and you can see that C3 red commercial color goes all the way from Atwood Avenue in the north all the way down, and the subject property is the first property on the east side of the street to be zoned B1. So it's really looking at moving a zone lot by one property. This property has been in commercial use for 50 years. The immediate area on Atwood Avenue, has Chase Bank, which is zone C3, Ocean State job lot, UPS store. There are residential uses to the south and east in the B1 zone, and there are also two other beauty salons within 400 feet. And the reason we're seeing this proposal now is because the applicant who's trying to lease out the smaller business spaces in this property was denied, one of the potential leases was denied a license by the State Department of Health because Cranston's zone does not allow hairdressers in this zone. And the reason the city was not able to issue a certificate of zoning is because this building was previously a medical office. And so its conversion to a beauty salon and other personal services is considered a change in use. And any change in use, you lose your pre-existing non-conforming status. So that's where we are. And really, I'm bringing this to you to support a small business owner continuing to operate their small business in the city of Cranston. I cite, in my analysis, I cited some of the economic development goals. And all the infrastructure and services, including public and water and sewer, are available. This allows the small business owner to continue to lease the small business spaces in this property. So I give a positive recommendation. In all fairness, when when the applicant brought this problem to us in the planning office, we discussed what some of the options are, and we recommended to the applicant that they pursue the zone change as a permanent solution to allow this business to continue to exist.
Thank you, Ms. Ashman. Is the applicant here and wanting to be heard on this matter?
Robert Murray, attorney for the applicant, Michelle Lombardi. Not to belabor the point, Beth has explained it very well. Ms. Lombardi acquired this property in 2022. In my history with this, living in the city and working in the area, this building has always been some type of a commercial office use. Our auxiliary judge used to have his law office there. We've had multiple tenants over time. And Beth is correct. What happened was she had a hair salon or an esthetician in the office renting space. This is not a big building, and the woman's license was coming up for renewal. And as part of the application with the Department of Health, she needed to present a zoning certificate. The tenant went to zoning, couldn't get the certificate. Minimum housing or the zoning office then jumped on this and said, "Oh, you got issues here now." And so as Beth said, this is the cleanest approach, permanent. The C2 use is appropriate for the area. Unfortunately, we need to also do a companion amendment to the comprehensive land use map. But I think it's certainly in line, given the area across the street to the north. And the other option would be for her, every time a tenant changes, to go to the zoning board. And that just is not practical, or, she's a single woman. This is just not practical or affordable for her to do that. So we're asking the city council to make a zone change here that is certainly, I think, fitting for the neighborhood. And there's no structural changes planned. What you see is what you get. It just assists her in the makeup of her tenancy, that the standard uses that are allowed in the C2 zone would be fine for this area. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Murray, and this, so I could just be, I read the memo correctly. This area has been used, this particular, as a commercial decades, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions for Mr. Murray about this topic? Okay. We will go now to public comment. Is there anyone here to make public comment on this application? No one in the room. Mr. Leamer, is there anybody left on Zoom that would like to make a comment on this application?
There is no public comment.
There is no public comment. Thank you very much. Ms. Ashman, could you proceed with your recommendation?
Based on the findings that this rezone is consistent with the surrounding land uses and the existing development pattern, the goals and policies of the comprehensive plan, and the general purposes of the zoning ordinance, staff recommends that the Plan Commission forward a positive recommendation on both the application for the future land use map change and for the zone change. at 135 Atwood Avenue.
Thank you. Are there any other questions or comments from my colleagues about this application? Commissioner Renzulli.
Thank you, President. I really was drawn to, and the planning director called this a permanent solution. Anytime we can have a permanent solution, if we can find a permanent solution for some other things that come before us, I think it would make everyone's lives a lot easier. So I'm very much in support of this, especially because it's already been used in commercial use for 50 years. So this just makes logical sense. So I would be in support of this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Renzulli. Any further comments or questions from my fellow colleagues? Hearing none, could I have a motion of some type on this mission? Mr. Carrero, Commissioner Carrero? Commissioner Carrero makes a motion for a positive recommendation. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Renzulli. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. It's unanimous. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Mr. Murray, once again.
Mine did that too. Popping up.
Right. I think we can take a quick 5-minute, 10-minute break. Let's start at 8:30 and go to bathroom, get your drinks, stretch, and we'll zoom through the zoning recommendations. Thank you. School's back in. You can proceed, Grace. Next on the agenda is zoning board of review recommendation by the planning commission to it. And we're dealing with Cobble Hill Development. There are two Cobble Hill Developments applications. If you can probably do them together, I think.
Okay,
All right, thank you.
sure. So again, the owner and applicant is Cobble Hill Development LLC. The subject property is located at 0 Hemlock Avenue, identified as Plat 5, lots 967, 968, and 2087. The request is to secure relief to construct a single-family dwelling with reduced lot frontage and width facing Hemlock Avenue. The zoning designation of the property is A6. The future land use map designation of the property is single-family residential 7.26 to 3.64 units per acre. As for aerial view, this slide shows the 3 subject lots for this application. Per the city ordinance on the screen, section 17.88.010, substandard lots of record and lot mergers. The 3 lots are considered merged for zoning purposes as all 3 lots are held in common ownership and are under 4,000 square feet in area per the first provision. In addition to the 3 subject lots for this application, Cobble Hill Development LLC additionally owns lots 6, 2088, 2089, 2090, and 291. Regarding these 5 lots, the applicant has submitted a separate application for the approval of zoning nonconformities regarding the existing single-family home and structure, which will be addressed as a separate application next. And just for the record, the parcels outlined in red are the subject parcel for this application, proposed parcel B. Here's the 3D aerial view. Site plan. The applicant has specifically requested 10 feet of relief for the A6 frontage requirement. Furthermore, I will state that even with the subtraction of the unbuildable land from lot 287 from the sewer easement, the lot coverage remains in zoning conformance. Again, pursuant to the zoning ordinance, the 8 lots owned by Cobble Hill Development LLC are considered merged for zoning purposes for the same reasons stated before. The proposed single-family house would be built within all required setbacks for the zone. And staff notes that roughly 52% of the residential parcels within the usual 400-foot radius have non-conforming frontage, which communicates this proposal is generally consistent. Next, I note that the proposed density would result from the proposal is in conformance with the future land use map. Lastly, I note that the following goals, policies, and actions from the comprehensive plan positively support this application. As for analysis, staff finds that the subject application would be consistent with the city's interest in supporting neighborhood housing needs, and it would not alter the character of the neighborhood, as this is an opportunity to create one new home at a scale and intensity that is consistent with the existing neighborhood. In completing our own informal analysis, I note that parcel A and B meet the test to be exempt from the lot merger under the subject ordinance. Parcel B proposed by the applicant and the remaining parcels, parcel A, each have greater area than 50% of the parcels within the 200 feet radius and therefore do not need to be combined per the subject ordinance. Staff further notes, due to the identified issues regarding the 8 merged lots, any positive recommendation on this application should be subject to the applicant receiving a merger determination from the city zoning enforcement officer to consider the 2 parcels separate. With that being said, my recommendation is a positive recommendation per the condition that the applicant receives a merger determination from the city zoning enforcement officer.
Thank you. That was the first application, right? Can you do the second as well at the same time, because we'll just do it all at once?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
So again, the second application is 27 Hemlock Avenue, identified as Plat 5, Lot 6, 2089, 290, and 291. This request is to secure relief for the location of the existing single-family home and accessory garage to establish zoning compliance for the existing nonconformities. This request includes the variances for the pre-existing non-conforming setbacks, as well as for the new frontage and accessory structure setback resulting from the lot mergers of the previous application. Again, here is the aerial view highlighting the lots for this subject application. The site plan. For findings of fact, the applicant is requesting relief for the primary residential structure pertaining to frontage, front and side setback requirements, as well as the side setbacks for the accessory structure. Staff notes that an informal review of the surroundings via GIS suggests that roughly 58% of the lots within the radius have non-conforming frontage and front setbacks, which suggests the existing residence is generally consistent with the surrounding area. Lastly, the existing density within the subject property is in conformity with the future land use map. And then lastly, I stated the same goals, policies, and actions from the comprehensive plan as the previous application. For analysis, according to the ordinance on the merger of substandard lots, the owner's 8 lots are combined and split into 2 lots pending confirmation by the zoning enforcement officer. Staff finds that granting relief for the subject property would be consistent with the city's interest in supporting neighborhood housing needs, as the home is an existing and legal non-conforming home. With that being said, I am providing a positive recommendation on this application.
Thank you, Ms. Brownell. Is the applicant here and wish to be heard? The applicant is not here. Is there anyone here who would like to make public comment on this matter? Mr. Lima, is there anyone online who would like to make public comment on this matter?
There is no public comment.
Okay. Are there any questions or comments from the commissioners regarding the 2 Hemlock applications for the staff, or questions or anything else whatsoever? Go ahead, Commissioner Renzulli.
Thank you, President. I would just like to say that I am in full agreement with the planning department on their recommendation. I appreciate that the scale and density of these proposals, it's consistent with the neighborhood, and that it does meet some goals in the comprehensive plan pertaining to residential land use. We do have a lot of discussion about the housing crisis and affordable housing, and I think that this actually pertains to that. So I would be in full support of passing this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Lee. Any other comments? Any questions for staff? Seeing none, now would be the time to make a motion.
we have to take them as a block? Do we have to motion for that? or
No, well, we need to. Two motion, yeah, motion on each.
One would be a motion for 0 Hemlock Ave, and the other would be a motion for the 27 Hemlock Ave.
I'll make a motion to approve an agreement with the findings of fact and the conditions and the staff recommendation for 0 Hemlock Avenue.
It's a, yeah, motion for positive, adopted staff's findings of fact and positive recommendation. Yes, okay. Made by Commissioner Renzulli. Is there a second to 0 Hemlock? Seconded by Commissioner Carrero. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. Now for 27 Hemlock.
I will make a motion to approve the positive recommendation of the planning department with their findings of facts and conditions in the staff recommendation.
Motion, positive recommendation made by Commissioner Renzulli. Is there a second to that motion? Seconded by Commissioner Exter. Any discussion on this motion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. Okay, thank you very much. Next up is the Dr. Joyce Martin application related to 1040 Cranston Ave. You may proceed when ready, sir.
Applications for 1040 Cranston Street, the owner applicant being Dr. Joyce Martin. The application is to allow relief from the table of uses to approve the conversion of a commercial building into a rooming / boarding house. Here you see the zone of C5, and you see the rare properties kind of split with the B is a B1. Cranston Street, the blue outline is the property, the existing building. Both properties, or at least all three properties are future land use map highway commercial services. Here is an aerial view. These are pictures that I took recently of the side of the building and the rear of the building. You see the rear is mostly parking. All right. Yep, all the applicant is asking for is just use variance for a rooming and boarding house, which is not allowed in C5 or B1, but it is allowed in B2, C1, and C2. Yeah, as we're reviewing it for the compatibility of the general character of the surrounding neighborhood, believe he doesn't impose any undue nuisances, and don't believe it's out of character for the surrounding area. So surrounding area, it's mostly commercial and residential. And the location is generally like appropriate for a boarding house. It's located near public services such as the Cranston Senior Center and the public library, grocery stores, workplaces, and public transportation. The area also features many high density residential uses, including 3 multifamily public housing developments and many smaller multifamily buildings in the area. And the east side of Cranston Street is also, which this is located on the east side of Cranston Street, is primary single and multifamily residences, even though it's C5 highway commercial services. Consistent with the comprehensive plan, even though it's highway commercial services designated, specifically the use of rooming and boarding houses, the comprehensive plan is silent on that. And there are 3 zoning districts that fall under highway commercial services, and none of them permit residential uses. But the majority of that eastern strip is residential properties, some smaller commercial uses in between as well. So the proposed use is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, but we believe that this inconsistency is addressed in the following ways. For one, the comprehensive plan, describes C5 as a transitional point between heavy commercial and industrial uses, which I believe this area is kind of near an industrial zoned area, going back to the zoning map, like kind of further south down there. But there's this significant amount of residential buildings that are kind of between that. And generally the existing land use that is designated as C5. It doesn't really meet this criteria at all, given that it's mostly residential with a little bit of like more neighborhood focused commercial uses in there. And specifically the Cranston Street between Arlington Avenue and Oneida Street, it features only 3 commercial buildings, all of which are vacant, and only 1 building which could be used for a C5 appropriate use, which would be like a larger commercial use usually, or near industrial use. Also, there's a significant concentration of public housing and nearby services that work in favor of the proposed use. So, therefore, while the proposed use is not directly in line with future land use map designation and the zoning district, it is in character with the existing uses in the existing neighborhood. And we also believe that both H2 and H4, also work in favor and support of the zone change. So therefore, we want to forward staff recommends a positive recommendation.
Thank you. Is the applicant here and wish to be heard on this matter?
Hi, I'm attorney Rafael Manzo on behalf of the owner applicant. As you're aware, this is for a use variance. We're seeking to implement a rooming boarding house at the property known as 1040 Cranston Street. I'm going to keep it brief and just say that, we're moving for approval, and we generally agree with the positive recommendation that this application provides a unique opportunity to advance goals H2 and H4 by providing a unique housing opportunity to serve generally underserved populations. So, with that, I'll keep it brief and open to any questions from the commission.
Okay. Any questions from the commissioners at this time? Commissioner Renzilli?
Thank you. What exactly is a rooming boarding house?
Well, so a rooming boarding house is, it's not defined in the city's ordinances, but it's generally temporary housing for indigent and those in need. But, generally the keyword there is temporary housing. So, this serves, people who have, certain troubles with, things at home. Generally, these uses are for youth who have, maybe they have certain problems with DCYF and need, some type of hybrid in between before placements.
Like a group home?
It's similar. A group home isn't the exact way that I would phrase it, because that's more of a limited term, I think, than rooming boarding house.
So how many rooms would individuals will be renting a room, essentially? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
On a
So there's-
short-term basis?
Yep, short-term basis. So what there is, and unfortunately you don't have this in front of you, but we do have a plan set which is submitted to the zoning board. And, the bedrooms are concentrated on the second floor. There's 3 bedrooms, and the remainder of most of the rooms are either office space or, their closets, bathrooms, things of that nature, kitchens. But as of right now, there's 3 bedrooms on the second floor, and then there's minimal alterations proposed to the first floor.
Okay, so this would be essentially renting out 3 rooms to 3 separate individuals, right? Unrelated individuals, basically, like almost like when you go to Narragansett and you rent a beach house and go to URI, similar to that, or no?
So there's no determination yet on what the exact capacity is going to be. I don't think that's, yeah, I don't think the capacity is not really something that is the subject of the use variance. That's to be worked out at a different time later on, based on need.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions before I ask mine?
How does someone go about
Mr.
knowing
Carrera.
that that is there? How does someone know that that's actually a boarding house, or how did you know that that's actually a room available for rent for these individuals?
Well, I think that that's something that my client would be able to clarify at the upcoming zoning board hearing on the 12th. But as far as advertisement goes, I'm sorry, I can't really answer that question at this time.
Okay, just have a few questions. How many units are going to be there? You said 3? Is that the plan?
Correct, yeah. So we have a plan set, which, you know, unfortunately you don't have the benefit.
Right.
In front of you. But there's 3 bedrooms existing on the second floor, and our proposed first floor has no new bedrooms. So it's all office space on the first floor, plus, you know, living room, dining room, kitchen, and several other areas. There's a connected garage, but on the proposed plan set, the office space in the first floor is remaining. Because obviously, because there would be professional staff, just due to the nature of the use. It's kind of a hybrid need, you know, because the nature of the people who stay at a room and boarding house need some type of professional care. So there's always some type of staff to make sure they need the office.
How many parking spaces are you having as part of this project?
So the parking spaces, there is a garage with enough space for 2 vehicles in front of it. It's a 2-car garage, so there's you know, technically 4 there, plus 7 exterior non-handicap spaces, and then 3 ADA compliant handicap spaces in front of it.
Okay. In the staff's report, it said that this proposal is inconsistent with the comprehensive plan, but then went on to say why it made a positive recommendation based on other things. Do you agree that it's inconsistent with the comprehensive plan on its face?
I would disagree with you, and the reason I would disagree with that is for the reasons stated at the end of the staff memo. It achieves certain goals and policies that are otherwise difficult to achieve through application. You know, so, you know, goal H4, for example, promote housing opportunity for a wide range of household types and income levels. There isn't really a lot of opportunities for, you know, some type of temporary emergency housing. It just that's the way it is, unfortunately. But, you know, this application, this project specifically provides, I mean, although it's a limited number, it still provides an opportunity to increase that type of housing for the city.
And you're expecting to convert the building, there is space next to it. You anticipate that you could actually add to that building with that additional space next to it?
There's nothing in our plan set that adds any structural changes to the gross square footage of the building.
All right. The last question, and I ask this because I know you're not usually come before us, but this is a use variance, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this is usually before the zoning board, but I always ask about it as well. You understand what the threshold is for a use variance, correct?
Yes, I do.
Okay, could you explain to me how you meet the threshold for a use variance? Because it's pretty high.
Well, I think that's something that I'm going to leave to John Mancini, the attorney in fact on the application for this at this upcoming zoning board hearing.
Okay, no problem.
And just for my edification, because I know more about rooming and boarding houses than I ever want to know. is there going to be an operator with a license at this facility?
It's my understanding that there will be.
And is that license, I mean, this, to me, looks like a community residence where you have a certain number of people and an operator with a license. Can you just explain on what your client plans to do there? Because in order for it to be a rooming or a boarding house, the owner or the operator has to provide the lodging. So can you just, is the operator going to be licensed? Who is the operator? Is it going to be a third-party facility, a vendor?
So it's not, my understanding is that it's not going to be a third-party facility. Dr. Martin had explained to me that she has a team set up to go in and, basically treat this as it's essentially their full-time passion project. But yes, it's my understanding that there is going to be a licensed operator managing the facility.
Any other questions from my colleagues or the staff for the applicant? Seeing none, we will go to public comment. Is there anyone here in the room that would like to make public comment on this facility? Please step forward, state your name and your address.
Good evening. My name is Andy Andujar. I'm the councilman for Ward 3. I want to thank you all for your service and welcome Ms. Renzulli to her new position. I spoke to the attorney in charge, Mr. Mancini, and he communicated with me that it was going to be temporary housing. The neighbors on Arlington and Sumner are in question. We do have an open house on the 11th, the day before zoning, but we are not in favor of any state licensing going into that facility. The neighbors have reached out to me and we are not in favor of that. So we hope that you do not recommend the positive recommendation for this on concern of the neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilman, and congratulations on your recent election. Is there anyone else here who would like to comment on this matter? Seeing none, Mr. Lima, is there anyone on Zoom that is here that would like to comment on 1040 Cranston Street?
There is no public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. The staff could just repeat again what the recommendation is.
Positive recommendation.
Okay. I'll just make a comment and then the commissioners can make a comment. For those of you who are accustomed to me here, I do not vote in favor of use variances. They have a very high standard. I will make exceptions to granting use variances, but they're pretty limited. Number one. Number two, on its face, this is not consistent with the comp plan. Number three, once you agree to this in this zone, then it'll be probably other people could come in and want to make zone changes. If you want to, make other use variances. If you want a use variance, go to the city council and make a zone change is my suggestion for these kinds of things. Don't come here and ask for use variances. That's my preference. So I'll be voting no on this positive recommendation, instead recommending a negative recommendation, but that's my view. So is there any comments or from the other commissioners about this matter?
Yeah,
Commissioner
I would-
Carrero?
I would just say that, I'm a little concerned about setting a precedent for that type of facility within the boundaries of Cranston. I'm a little concerned, does that become a bed and breakfast, or is that considered the rooming house? And do we have any rooming houses presently in the city of Cranston?
Well, Solicitor Marcel, do you have some information for us?
To my knowledge, no, we do not. We do have a couple of, again, community residences which are allowed under the state zoning code, but they have to meet specific criteria. There are a few of them around. But to my knowledge, 17 years, Frank, I've never seen someone come to Cranston for a rooming house. So, and I don't know of one that exists.
Yeah, and I sort of agree, because I've been on the zoning board for over 10 years, plus a couple recently, and I had never had anything like that come before the zoning board in the past, especially for a use change. So, I mean, again, based on my understanding of what that is and what's going on and the concern for the neighborhood, I would not be voting to approve a positive recommendation.
Any other comments? Commissioner Renzulli.
Thank you. I'm just curious, were the neighbors notified about this meeting?
Yes, so they are not under state law, and they're not actually notified of this planning meeting. They're only notified via regular certified mail of the zoning hearing. So a lot of times you'll be at this meeting and you'll say, hey, no one's against this, and then 50 people show up at the zoning meeting, but they're not, although it is advertised on the Secretary of State's website, they're not required to give specific notice to the homeowners for this meeting, only for the zoning meeting.
Okay, and being new here, pardon my ignorance on this exactly, but this is going to zoning as well. So how does what happens at zoning
So
affect us?
what you're doing is the same thing that you were doing with the zone changes. You're just doing it to the zoning board. Under our code, you give a recommendation to the zoning board, usually upon consistency with the comprehensive plan, and then other factors that you may or may not want to add to the application. So it is a non-binding recommendation to the zoning board. And the zoning board can accept your recommendation, or they can, not accept your recommendation, but it is non-binding. It is admitted into the record. They do take into consideration, especially with the comprehensive plan, which in this case goes really to the application. It is, it's a use variance that's up for you guys to decide, but it's not like a sign where it really doesn't have anything to do with the comprehensive plan.
And then also, so does this never go to the city council because it's not a change of zone, it's just a variance?
Correct. So exactly. And
Okay.
that's what, to not need a use variance, you would need to go to the city council and ask for a zone change, which is really the proper way to do it, because the applicant, at the zoning board, the applicant has to prove that there is no other beneficial use to the property unless the variance is granted. I don't know how they're going to do that, but I guess I'll see it next week. So.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, this would be the appropriate time for some type of motion. Commissioner. Commissioner Zales makes a motion for a negative recommendation. Is there a second to Mr. Zedell, Commissioner
Second.
Zedell? Second by Mr. Correo, because he raised his hand first. Okay. Okay, any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of a negative recommendation to the zoning board on this matter, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Seeing none, it's a negative recommendation unanimously. Next is Storage 5 Cranston LLC on 40 Sharp Drive.
So before you get going, for the record, I have to recuse myself. The Tasca family is a client of mine, and it's my understanding from the application that they are an owner of 40 Sharp Drive. So I'll be stepping away for this one.
Thank you. You will be missed, Solicitor Marcello. Please proceed. All right.
All right. Another use variance for 0 and 40 Sharp Drive. This is for Storage 5 Cranston, and it's to allow relief from the table of uses to prove the use of a motor vehicle storage and related motor vehicle sales. Here is the zoning map. And just a quick note, the red line outlines both properties, but this actually, the lines that you see there Those are actually outdated lines. We just recently had an administrative subdivision that takes the building, this building right here, there's was actually subdivided off from these 3 parcels right here. And I believe that 40 Sharp Drive is intending to buy these 3 parcels, which are now 1 parcel. That should be reflected in the site plan for this. Yeah, but it's a M2 zone. Future land use map says it's industrial. Here is an aerial view of the site. You can see most of the site is already parking, and then there's I believe some drainage over here as well. And also 40 Sharp Drive is the building that's down here. Yeah, so on the site plan, you can see how the building up here was subdivided off from these parcels down here. That is our 0 Sharp Drive, and then the neighboring lot is going to be 40 Sharp Drive. Again, it's just simple use variance, and currently we have a situation where we have motor vehicle storage in the use table, but it's not permitted in any district. This was a change in 2023, I believe, where because I believe this was allowed by special use permit at one point, and then city council decided to remove, turn all the S's for special use permits into permitted uses. So now it's not permitted in any district. Under consideration of compatibility, the general character surrounding the area, we generally believe that it won't impose any undue nuisances, and that it's not out of character beyond any uses in the site of the surrounding area. As stated, surrounding area is largely commercial and industrial uses, and the proposal is an industrial use. It's listed as an industrial use in our zoning ordinance, and the property features a significant amount of already like pavement for parking, which was used to be for the Swarovski manufacturing building, but that manufacturing building has now been subdivided off and will be turned into self-storage. We have an approved DPR on that. And that requires very little vehicle parking, self-storage uses. So that's why there's now all this land for parking that is now available. And motor vehicle storage in the area would be aligned with the area's existing use, which was mostly just a parking lot. Future land use map designates parcels industrial. Comprehensive plan is silent on that kind of specific use of motor vehicle storage, and is considered an industrial use in the zoning ordinance, and thereby it's largely in line with the future land use designation as industrial. We used to believe that the goal and the 2 policies also speak in support of the positive recommendation on this. And yeah, staff support a positive recommendation on this.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Is the applicant here and wishes to be heard on this matter?
Yes, Robert Murray again for the applicant, G3 40 Sharp Drive LLC. Mr. Marcello alluded, and that is a Casca family-related entity, Casca Enterprises. They own the property of 40 Sharp Drive, and it is presently being utilized by them for office, training, a room, accounts payable, backroom operation of Casca Enterprises, as well as a couple other industrial tenants in the building. We've entered into a purchase sale agreement to buy. Can we put up the purple? Yeah, that's fine. that's the site plan you're looking at, that, the bottom right, white is where 40 Shop Drive is. At the top is the One Kenny Drive, the former Swarovski headquarters. So the purple area, we've, present owner Storage 5 went through the city's administrative subdivision process and has created that purple, whatever it is, and that purple shaped lot. We have entered through a purchase sale agreement to buy it, subject to getting the necessary zoning approvals to store motor vehicles on here. Our definition in the zoning code for storage of vehicles limits storage to 30 days. And we're asking the zoning board not to impose that restriction, that if we in fact are approved, that on occasion, theoretically, we would have vehicles stored on this parking lot for more than 30 days. So to clarify that in the zoning application. I just want to back up for a second. The Tasker family, as many of you know, has made substantial investment in Cranston, the Howard Industrial Park area. Obviously, their main dealership at 1300 Pontiac Avenue. As stated, they own 40 Shop Drive. They own property across the street at 33 Shop Drive, which is their Tasker Collision Center. They own 2 buildings around the corner at 25 Slater Road, which is used for parts and warehouse. And they own the building at 26 Slater Road, which is the Tasker Truck Center. So the introduction of the Tasker operation to the Howard Industrial Park is not novel to this application. Presently, these cars are being stored at the former medium security prison site. We lease land from the owner of that, the former prison. As the commission may know, that building was recently torn down. I represent the owner, and hopefully it's, we've already gone through the land development process. Hope to finalize that soon with an announcement of the future redevelopment of the prison site. But once that happens, or if that happens, taskers will be looking for areas where they can store vehicles that ultimately would be made available to the consumers for purchase. So this site became available, and we got to an agreement subject to the zone. I do want to go back to comment that Jonas just made about that the end of December of 2023, the City Council, at the Planning Commission's recommendation, did eliminate all the special use permits unless there were standards in the zoning code. There are very few standards for special use permits. It was done that evening with my concern expressed that we will never get to the point where the planning department and planning commission reinstitute standards for all these uses. I remember vividly the president sitting right there saying, not a problem, because you can always go get a use variance. And this is a year and a half later, we're back. And so this is a use variance, I think, worthy of support, given that particular facts, set of circumstances. Just want to reinforce that thinking, just in case there was a moment of lapsing memory. But the staff has made a good recommendation here, and Taskers have been good corporate citizens, as speaks for itself. And this is an opportunity to take the existing parking lot for to use it in concert with their other businesses in the area. I would be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Commissioner Zales?
Counselor, you stated that the cars are currently being stored at another location.
At the former medium security on Gotti Drive.
Okay, so it's occurring somewhere else. We're just saying that operation, it's a short,
Well, we don't have a long-term lease there because my client, in dealing with the taskers, said, you need space, I have space, but the cars stayed while Venagro was knocking down the prison, which I was concerned about, but we didn't damage any cars. And they're there today. We are going to remove them to Shop Drive if the zoning board approves.
Just wanted to make sure I understood what the operation is currently.
Thank you.
And by the way, we're there, the prison, when the city council rezoned the prison, the car use was, I didn't contemplate it, but we included it in the permitted uses on the prison site. So we didn't have to go to zoning for it. One of the few times I looked ahead and knew what was happening. So that's why the city council included that in the zone change for the prison.
Commissioner Carrera.
To the president, are we talking about storage of vehicles prior to being sold, or is he opening up another car lot at this location?
Storage of vehicles to be sold principally at 1300 Pontiac Avenue. They own 50 dealerships, but others in Rhode Island, but principally those vehicles are readily available for customers at Pontiac Avenue.
So it's purely for surface storage of vehicles that they don't have room for on the existing dealership lot?
Correct. And in the wording of the application, I did include motor vehicle sales just in case, I don't know the operation, whether that we take a golf cart and drive the customer over there around the cars parked there. So I didn't want everybody to say, well, we're doing a little more than storing them. So that was included in the application. But there is no sales office going to be there. There's that, it's packing the cars in and keeping track where they are. So if somebody wants a red, whatever.
Are they thinking of any type of protective fencing around it to protect the vehicles, or are they just going to leave the vehicles open?
Well, this is a rather isolated piece. They already operate in the building. There are agreements with the self-storage because the self-storage is going to have, there are established easements already that they've declared coming in off Kenny Drive when you come down that strip of purple to get to the back of the self-storage. So we're going to have to work with them. So we're going to do some landscaping and lighting, not a lot of lighting, but we have to do it in concert with the self-storage use. So I don't believe right now they're talking about putting up a fence around the entire perimeter. I'll have that answer for the zoning board, but they're wide open right now at the prison site, and it hasn't been an issue. Because as you know, the Howard Industrial Park, you really got to, when you go and get in the back there, you really got to know where you're looking. So, but that is not to say that vehicles parked couldn't be considered an attraction for somebody, but whether it's Pontiac Avenue, Slater Road, or Shop Drive, they've never had vandalism problem or anything. So, but I don't want to say we're not putting a fence up because I know Jonas will can vouch for this during the administrative subdivision process and the development plan review process for the self-storage. They disclosed, these cross easements and things.
And just quickly, the last question is, do you know how many vehicles potentially would be stored there?
400 to 600.
Any other questions for
I don't know
council?
if that's a good number, but
It's enough for the whole city.
I was just gonna say, I think that was just a guesstimate on your part to
No,
be approximately.
David Tasker gave me that number today. So,
Really? 400 vehicles could fit in that area right now, 400 to 600 vehicles.
They sound the very skinny people, so you can get in the door. And you need the car.
Any other questions to Mr. Murray? And seeing none, we will go to public comment. Is there anyone here who wishes to make public comment on the 40 Sharp Drive application? I see no one in the room that wishes to make public comment on this matter. Is there somebody on Zoom that would wishes to make public comment on this matter?
There is no public comment.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Bergman, just repeat the recommendation.
We recommend City Planning Commission adopt findings of fact document above and forward a positive recommendation to the application to the zoning board of review.
Thank you. I'll make a quick comment at this point. I will be supporting this recommendation, make a positive recommendation. Mr. Murray has a good memory and so do I. What happened is in the state in 2023, the state imposed certain requirements on cities and towns for special use permits. And therefore, the Planning Commission and the City Council thought it was a good idea to, for those that do not have specific and objective criteria, to not permit them, with the understanding that the applicant could always come in for a zone change, changing the zoning code, or a use variance. When reviewing this type of application under these circumstances, because I know this was allowed by special use permit prior to the change, I will not look at the use variance so stringently and focus only on the comprehensive plan, whether it's consistent with it in my recommendation. And because the comprehensive plan is consistent with it, I will be voting in favor of it. So I just wanted to put that comment on for Mr. Murray's benefit. Any other comments? Commissioner Renzulli.
Thank you, President. Since facts do matter, and it's a fact that you did say that they should come back for a special use variance, I think this is a good application for this variance, and because it was allowed by special use permit prior. So I would also be in favor of this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments from my fellow commissioners on this matter? Okay, hearing none, now would be an appropriate time for a motion. I can make the motion this one. I'll make a motion for adopt the staff's recommendation for a positive on this. Second by Commissioner Carrero. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, the ayes have it. It passes. Congratulations, Mr. Murray. Next. Hey. I'm not going to comment in response to what an applicant says before me. Blue Moon Properties on 42 Phoenix Ave. Mr. Bergman.
All right. This is a dimensional variance request for 42 Phoenix Avenue. And this is to allow relief from front setback and parking requirements to install a pavilion and deck. Blue line highlights these two lots, C5 zone and neighborhood commercial future land use map designation. Here again, it's an aerial view of the lot. See right here is the actual establishment. It's existing a deck back here with the stage and the parking lot. Phoenix Ave right here, Green Avenue over here. Yeah. See from the front. Here's a map of the proposal. Proposal is, again, this building stays the same. They have an existing patio in the front. Mostly what's changing is proposed pavilion that they want to build right here with an attached deck. Striped parking, currently parking is unstriped. And then the stage is going to be moved slightly. In addition, there's going to be installation of these safety barriers. Yeah, these are so they're requesting relief for a side setback, rear setback in a C5, and off-street parking. Specifically, you need 13 spaces of relief. Consistently with the neighborhood, the use itself would not really change from the existing use because property, sorry, the proposal is not really necessarily significant change from the use. since there's already some outdoor seating there, it's just slightly more intensive than what they currently have. And it is neighborhood level commercial establishment, and it does have some like residential in the area as well. And generally this is just like formalizing many of the temporary elements that are on the site already, making a more established pavilion than the more temporary structures that they have there right now. So it's a significant investment into Knightsville, and though like there could potentially be concern of like neighboring residences that are impacted by potential nuisances. One is noise, which really is not really predicted to increase as use in the properties to remain the same. And I actually called the Cranston Police Department, and they generally said that noise complaints have been pretty rare in the last 2 years, even though they have, outdoor seating and even a stage there for music, and they're pretty adjacent to residential uses, but the police department said that they haven't really received too many noise complaints. And the other concern could be parking. So we really don't really have enough information. It was a statement about parking demand in that area. They don't have a parking study or anything, so make it fully conclusive demand of like what their parking need is really difficult to gauge. But when I was talking to the police, for example, they didn't really receive any like complaints about parking. So this property or in the general area, or that specific area of Knightsville at least. And we know that the businesses in the immediate area have adequate levels of off-street parking. So, there really shouldn't be any fight over like on-street parking and stuff like that. If they would need to use on-street parking. But generally, I think the applicant during the zoning board probably needs to demonstrate that, parking won't be an issue. We find it's generally consistent with the zoning and the future land use map designations. So the future land use map designates it as a neighborhood commercial services. The interesting thing is it's zoned for C5, which that came up before. That's like the heavy business / industrial district, not really an appropriate district for neighborhood commercial services. That future land use map designation is more reserved for C1 through C3. So there's that issue. But the use itself is appropriate for the future land use map. And again, the use itself is not changing. It's just more formalized elements of the use. And we believe that the four policies below will also support approval of this application. Yeah, and for these dimensional variants, I want to forward a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Very quick question, and just before I hand it over to the applicant. When you said, it says here, the Cranston Police have no reports of complaints regarding parking. You know this, you called the Cranston Police Department?
Not no reports. It was, I believe, 2 reports in the last 2 years.
2 reports?
Parking? No,
Parking.
Parking, no. Noise, there was 2 reports.
Okay, that's what I want to know is parking. Okay.
Parking, they said
No, okay,
they didn't
thank you.
mention it.
Okay, thank you. Is the applicant here and wishes to be heard on this application?
Just very quickly, I represent the Blue Moon Pub. Do we have the elevation?
I don't believe I ever received an elevation.
I gave it to you. That's fine. No, I just, the owners of the Blue Moon Pub are trying to upgrade the facility. The setbacks, they're obviously on the property line now. They're just trying to match that along the way. I don't know if Jonas mentioned, but in addition to building a new outside pavilion area, covered pavilion area, they're also adding a men and women's bathroom. So as you get the crosshatched area there for the, where it says Blue Moon Pub, and then you're coming into the new pavilion area. Along that wall, there's going to be a new, going all the way to to the rear of the property, right there, men's and women's bathroom and a walk-in cooler, and then step down. So, I mean, it's a rather attractive looking, I know you can't probably see this, but it is a architect, you know, they spent some time on architecture and designing it with railings and things like that. So, you know, the Blue Moon Pub has evolved over the years. You know, principally they survived through COVID with outside dining and things like that. And now the whole, you know, atmosphere and ambiance of Knightsville is changing under the mayor's leadership. And parking, frankly, in my opinion, they have probably more parking than many establishments do in the Knightsville area. That's part of the quaintness. That's part of the feel for the neighborhood and why it's seems to be thriving right now. So they would, you know, they'd like to enhance their facility, and this is the time when they decided to come forward to get the necessary approvals. Be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for Mr. Murray? Any comments? Okay. Any, we'll go with public comment at this point. Is there any public comment here regarding the Blue Moon application? I see none in the room. Ms. Lima, is there any online?
There's no public comment online.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bergerman, just repeat your recommendation one more time.
Forwarding a positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Bergman. Quick comment for myself. I'll be voting in favor of this recommendation. I generally have some concerns about when someone asks for less parking than they're required to have. However, based on the representation that this area has had no complaints of lack of parking, this is not like Patuxent Village where there is a major parking problem. I'm supportive of this and therefore think it's consistent with the comprehensive plan. Any comments or anything else from my fellow colleagues? Seeing none, this would be the appropriate time for a motion.
The chair make a motion to accept the positive recommendation to the zoning board.
Commissioner Carrero makes a positive motion for positive recommendation. Mr. Exter, Commissioner Exter seconds that motion. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed signify by saying nay. The ayes have it. It passes. Thank you very much. That concludes our zoning board recommendations, and we can move quickly to the amendment to subdivision regulations.
Thank you. We've heard the subdivision recommendations on previous nights and had discussion. Since then, the only two changes that you'll see in the draft that was posted for tonight's meeting, we meticulously went through the lettering and numbering, and we caught that, you know, instead of building coverage, it now says building lot coverage. So minor cleanup, but these are ready for your consideration. And I'm hoping that tonight you'll consider adopting the subdivision and land development regulations and also authorize the planning department to use the updated checklists that we've prepared that mirror these regulations.
Okay, so that everyone's clear. These are exactly the same regulations that has been posted. We had public comment. We had some public comment at one point from Mr. Murray about these. The only change from what has already been posted to now is to adopt a building lot coverage definition that is consistent with state law, and then some corrections on the numbering, you know. So that's about it. So first, I'd like to open it up. There's any questions from the commissioners about this? Any comments from the commissioners about these regs? Okay. I'll give it one more time. Is there anybody who would like to make public comment on this regulation? Oh, Mr. Murray. Mr. Murray wants to make public comment.
I have no comments on the regulations, and first, let me note for the record, the staff and I were in great agreement tonight on many recommendations, so I don't take the next remarks as being unappreciative. I have no issue with the regulations. As you know, I'm totally in favor of them, and just getting rid of that certified mail issue is a gain. So I have no problem with that. I just want to take a moment because when they were posted, it's the first time I've seen the checklist.
Yes, before we go into that, thank you. There is, Beth, there's nothing on our open meeting agenda that talks specifically about the checklist. It only talks about the regulations. I want to be concerned about violating open meeting about the checklist. Open meeting notice, because it's not specifically listed.
That wasn't the intent of my remarks. I want.
As soon as you did that, I said, I want to pause a moment on this. And the solicitor can tell me to stop or what I'm doing is wrong or something, but out of abundance and caution, because our agenda says only regulations, it makes no comment about the checklist. I'm a little concerned about having a discussion about it and a vote on it.
So we definitely can't have a vote on it. Although, in my opinion, as far as a checklist goes, I don't know if
we need to.
A planning board needs to vote on the checklist.
Okay.
However, in that case, it's my understanding, and Beth, stop me if I'm wrong, is I just took a look at the checklist, is that is the state, not mandated checklist, but that's the checklist that's given to us by the state. Is that correct?
Yes, so we started with the model provided by the state and then meticulously went through our revised subdivision regulations and cleaned it up. And not so much a vote, but I'd like to start using the new checklists, and I definitely would like your permission to do that. Or at least your acknowledgement. I don't want to do that without.
Yeah, so I would say two things. One is, let's not vote on the checklist. Let's vote on the subdivision regulations separately, and then why don't we just take comments, and since Mr. Murray is here, and if you want to vote on checklist, we'll put it on the agenda for next month.
That sounds about right. Okay. Go ahead, Mr. Murray.
That would be great. I appreciate that. I have two thoughts. Principal. First, and I'll defer to Mr. Correo on this. I haven't spent a lot of time in all fairness because I just kind of woke up that these were on the agenda, or at least on the link, and I looked at them. One of the concerns I have is that under the major subdivision land development checklist, it seems to be for master plan. If I'm reading the artwork correctly, the columns, that if we're proposing for, if we're proposing service by public water and public sewer, beyond, right now, we just get acknowledgement from Providence Water that water is available, or in the case of sewer from Veolia or Public Works saying sewer is available. If I read this, it now says at the master plan level, we have to have a confirming water service available, approval of the connection to the existing water main as depicted on the plan. If extensions proposed, approval from the company or district of the extension of the water main. And then on the sewer, it's comparable language where it's, if I'm reading this correctly, you almost have to finally design these things at a master plan level.
That doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
no, I agree with you that doesn't make sense, that shouldn't make sense. So
if you could take a look at that.
Absolutely, and I see this as something that needs to be field tested and shaken out. And
I wasn't being critical. It's
No.
just that I think the term was unintended consequences, and that just.
And in my mind, the checklists don't actually provide any additional requirements. They're just reflective of the requirements. And they're a tool that we list our requirements alongside other things that commonly come up that may be required by other agencies or other offers at City Hall. So one of the things that I like about this new version of the checklist is we acknowledge all the fees that are going to come out of Cranston City Hall, even if they're not from the planning department. And so we've really tried to consolidate and think about it in terms of the user. What are the questions we get from the users? But I would like to start using the checklist, but also work with them over time to, make them as lean as they can be and to use the language people encounter. Like, for example, if the tax official calls their thing a radius package, we're going to call it a radius package. So they walk down there and ask for one.
So
They
I-
get one.
No,
So,
that's fine.
yeah.
There may be other things like that, but I just think that, I'd rather have a checklist that's been, taken out for a spin without it being forced on people. For that very reason.
Okay.
I walked in today with 800 pounds of plans for the Cranston Print Works.
Thank you,
I already
Bob.
had the checklist prepared off the old one, and I didn't want to have to deal with the new one, so, but
We could even entertain allowing people to use either checklist for the next few months while we're shaking them down.
well, in the alternative, what ends up happening, if there's an item that I think is not appropriate, I'm gonna then have to request a waiver or explain why we're not complying with it. And I just, the reasonable minds, I think, can agree on these things. I'm not trying to, but that was one that jumped out at me. I just think you advanced the ball too far on at a master plan level, what level of design we should have to do for a sewer thing. I don't know if Mr. Gray.
Mr.
President, I just
Want to speak about this?
kind of agree with Bob, though. I would like to say we'd have the opportunity to maybe sit with planning and if possible, get stakeholders or at least one, or Mr. Murray, if he's available, to sort of sit down and go through each one of those items. I agree. I don't like to see any of these checklists become too cumbersome, that it almost makes it prohibitive to get through it and almost impossible.
You're supposed to make it easier,
Yeah,
aren't they?
so unfortunately, that's the state trying to make it easier, is to come up with that checklist.
But are we obligated by law to use it, or are we using that as a
No,
template and we
it's the model checklist. So, obviously, we can deduct, take it.
But I think it would be a great opportunity to sit down.
No, I agree, and I can be part of that too. And
Yeah, to just get a couple of stakeholders, go through that list at least once, so before you take it on a trial run,
And there are all three of them too. There's major, minor, and
Right.
administrative.
that
so
we
there's-
have an opportunity to go through it before you do it and continue to use the existing one until we can come up with that and
All
hopefully.
right, yeah, why don't we set it down for next month's agenda in the next 30 days? We can try to get together.
Could I just, my last point while I'm.
Absolutely not, Bob. Go ahead.
The staff dutifully has attempted to impose the zoning board fees on unified development review, okay? At the bottom of the checklist, if you're doing unified development, so in addition to the $8,000 I paid today for the print works, if we were doing unified development, I would have to pay another 13% for unified development. First, I don't think procedurally the staff or the planning commission, I think you need the city council involved in, this is setting a fee. I don't think you need to do that unilaterally. But interestingly, the speaker, in doing his good work on unified development, said that requests for variances and issuance of special use permits related to major or minor subdivisions shall be submitted as part of the application material for the preliminary plan stage or the master plan stage. Well, my argument is the statute really said, I think if I read it, that you can't grab another fee from me. That's just, but you certainly can't do it without city council approval. So but that's just a thought. And frankly, in a serious note, when you look at that, if that's the direction you want to go, these fees are applicable to structures. They're not applicable to parcels of land. For example, it's $150 for a residence or a single family dwelling. Well, sometimes, like next month, I'm coming with a minor subdivision, that needs UDR relief from the land, not the structure. So, so we took what was in the zoning code, tried to put it over here for UDR. So I'm not having a heart attack over it. I just share that thought.
Thank you, Mr. Murray. Thank you for your public comment. we will not be voting on, obviously, this checklist issue. I leave it to the staff of whether or not you want to bring it up for the next meeting.
Mhm.
I think there's some work to be done in figuring out how we want to proceed with this. You can communicate with stakeholders or wherever you may want on that. But for the meantime, we'll just use the current checklist.
Well, I will be using both in order to
Right.
field test the new ones.
Okay, all right. Is there any other public comment on the regulations? None in the room. Mr. Lima, is there somebody online that wants to talk about the regulations?
There is no public comment.
I don't know who that person is, but that person's been really interested in what we're doing. Oh, it's Channel 10? Anyway, okay, if there's no further questions or comments, a motion for the approval of our amended subdivision regulations would be in order at this time. Is that a mumbling from the, oh,
I make a motion, Mr. President, to adopt the new regulations.
okay, motion made by Commissioner Carrero, seconded by Commissioner Renzulli. You had your chance earlier, Mr. Sells. Any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, say nay. Guys have it. Okay, last couple of things on the agenda, City Planning Director's report. It's almost 10 o'clock. We're almost out of here.
Okay, so as you've seen in your email, we have created a special meeting for the capital budget improvement program, and that'll be on March 5th. Also, we are having the Cranston East High School venue for our next meeting because Mulligan's Island is on the agenda. And I want to just briefly introduce our municipal fellow, Toby Arment, who's over here, who has been assigned to the city of Cranston through September 2026. So it's a very good time to have an extra set of professional.
Well, welcome aboard, Mr. Arman. All right.
And also, I will be sending out an email. As we dive into the comprehensive plan, I'm going to send out an email and ask each of you if there's a particular element you're most interested in and want to engage. And I'd love to have some individual conversations with members of the Plan Commission and also do the same for the City Council in order to sort of strategize about how to do outreach about the individual elements of the comprehensive plan.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Ashman. That's the City Planning Director's report. And the Mulligan's Island is a
Yes.
joint meeting, right? With the City
Mulligan's Island
Council.
is a joint meeting with City Council.
Okay, so we will be there with the City Council, so we have to be in our best behavior for this meeting. And then once
March
that
4th.
ends, we will go to our regular scheduled programming of subdivisions and zoning recommendations afterwards. Yeah. Yeah, so it'll be like 6:30 will be our joint meeting, and then whenever that ends, it will be our regular meeting on that. Okay, that's it. This would be appropriate time for a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Made by Commissioner Renzulli. Who wants to second that motion? Commissioner Carrera wants to second that motion. Any further discussion on this matter? I didn't think so. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, nay. Ayes have it. Thank you very much. I'll see you next month.
Thank you for adopting.